Chapter 1645, Infiltrating, Part 2. If you just leave like this, you will regret it, Mr. Sunil Chetri. This business could mean a profit of millions of credits. With that money, you could even buy a decommissioned military cruiser, said the mysterious Corellian broker. James Bond turned his head and replied coldly, I want to make money, but I value my life more. A one-time 500,000-ton tractor beam? I can't think of any place other than a fleet that could use it. Don't tell me this is a Republic military order. Unless you can prove these goods are genuinely for engineering purposes, you should find someone else. I guarantee it with my personality. Personality? Heh, goodbye. James Bond waved dismissively and turned to leave. Show me your stuff, the broker yelled from behind. James Bond turned back and said lightly, The location is up to me. My assistant will be with you the whole time, and I'll be in touch constantly, said the broker. Ah, this. The BIS assistant was startled upon hearing this. He glanced at the intimidating Gabriel Tosh standing nearby, feeling extremely terrified. What? Do you have any questions? James Bond asked. No problem. James Bond didn't say much more and led the assistant directly to his spaceship. Nova sat in the cockpit, entered an unknown coordinate, and piloted the spaceship to an uninhabited galaxy. Here, a robot-piloted cargo ship floated alone among the rings of a gas giant. Nova docked the spaceship with the cargo ship. A group of people boarded the cargo ship and opened a secret compartment, revealing a tractor beam generator over 10 meters long. The tractor beam generator looked very rough, with many exposed wires and crude welding in some places. It appeared to be a hastily made product. Seeing this, James Bond felt reassured. The military intelligence department of the Fourth Civilization had truly paid attention to detail, making this tractor beam launcher look like it was produced in a makeshift workshop. It seemed they had been planning this for a while, perhaps since they anticipated the Republic would launch a large-scale attack. Just this thing? The BIS assistant looked dissatisfied at the pile of rags. What's the matter? It seems you prefer the products of Kuat Power Dockyard. Their tractor beams are smooth and beautiful, James Bond said coldly. This is our handmade product. It may not look as good, but its actual performance is not much different from what Kuat produces. As he spoke, Gabriel Tosh stepped forward, his burly frame towering over the short BIS man like a mountain of muscle. Then let's try, the BIS man stammered. James Bond immediately ordered several agents disguised as workers to bring over some robots, connect the tractor beam generator to a separate energy device on the cargo ship, and prepare for launch. Put the shell on for our guest. Let him see our craftsmanship. James Bond commanded like a seasoned leader, a stark contrast to the shrewd businessman he had been moments ago. This change in demeanor made the BIS man trust him even more. Several more robots arrived and began moving the steel shells piled nearby for welding. Kuat Power Dock style, James growled again. The robots quickly replaced several other shell steel plates and started the installation. We have deployed hyperspace signal receivers in this galaxy. As long as hyperspace communication is sent out, we may be able to track where the target of the communication is, Nova's voice echoed in James Bond's mind. Also, I must remind you that this person is from BIS. The BIS have highly developed brains. I've tried before. It's almost impossible to control their minds unless they are killed. Then James Bond thought to himself. The first test failed. Are you sure? Nova asked, a hint of surprise in her voice. Trust me, James Bond replied mentally. He then turned to the workers and shouted, Hurry up, we don't have time to waste. The installation was completed quickly. James led the BIS to the porthole and pointed to the countless ice asteroids in the outer star ring. The reason I placed these tractor beams here is for testing purposes. It's hidden enough here. He then shouted to the back, Start the test. Boss, we've chosen an asteroid. According to the scan, it weighs 477,000 tons. Mark it and start the test. James picked up his personal terminal, looked at the marked asteroid, then pointed outside the porthole. That one! Look out! The tractor beam generator vibrated and roared, emitting a faint green magnetic field beam that shone directly on the asteroid. Under the controller's guidance, the 470,000-ton asteroid began to shake, captured by the magnetic field generated by the tractor beam, and slowly moved towards the spacecraft. However, the controller suddenly screamed as the asteroid shattered, sending countless ice fragments flying. The test had failed. "Is this your quality? You want to sell us this junk?" the Biss taunted. "Enrage him," James Bond thought to himself. He then shouted, "No, this was an accident. Something must have fallen into it when welding the shell just now." He turned to the robot welding the shell and yelled, "You, stupid robot, stop it!" The Bissman felt a surge of anger. He jumped up and yelled at James Bond, "You are a liar! You tricked me into seeing this pile of scrap metal." James Bond, equally irritable, retorted, "You don't want to pay and expect to get something for nothing." The two quarreled violently. Nova adjusted her glasses, sighed, and said to the Biss's assistant, "Notify your boss. Don't let them quarrel." I don't have the big boss's contact information," the assistant replied, dazed even in the face of the quarrel. "Think of a way. Whether this deal goes through depends on your big boss," Nova said sincerely. The assistant nodded and stepped forward to break up the fight, while Nova pushed James Bond away. After being pulled away by his assistant, the Bissman suddenly felt a sense of clarity. He was dazed and couldn't understand why he had been so agitated. The first test had failed. They could try again. Why was he so angry? Now, looking at the still angry James Bond, he felt the atmosphere was awkward. Nova smiled slightly, looked at Gabriel Tosh provocatively, and thought, "Can you do anything besides blowing this Bissman's head off?" Tosh snorted heavily. The Bissman, thinking the big black guy Tosh was coming for him, broke into a cold sweat. His assistant leaned down and whispered something to him. The Bissian sighed, took out his communicator, and started contacting the behind-the-scenes boss. The location was remote, and he had to change several frequency bands before sending the message. "Aha! Tracked it down! A hyperspace base station in the Kiefer Galaxy. Next, as long as that side is also connected, we can further lock the other party's position," Nova said excitedly. Soon, the communication connected. The mysterious Corellian broker appeared in the holographic projection. "Why are you in such a hurry to contact me?" The experiment failed. I feel." The Bissman glanced at Tosh timidly and said, "I think we need further experiments." "Is this an experiment? Is that what you asked me to do? And now you come to me after failing? What's the point of me taking you on then?" The broker's patience had worn thin, his tone brimming with anger. "Anyway, you've made contact, so let's proceed with the next test. Don't let this idiot ruin our deal." James Bond appeared to be persuading him, but in reality, he was pointing the finger at the opponent, Sri Lankan. The broker shot Biss a cold look, remaining silent but not ending the communication, indicating his agreement. They then conducted a series of tests. This time, the tractor beam generator functioned flawlessly. Whether it was horizontal dragging, vertical dragging, or circular dragging, the device handled all maneuvers with ease and stability. The production quality of Tyron Heavy Industry is indeed impressive. "That old man Rory Swan knows his stuff," Nova commented. "However, we did leave a minor flaw in this generator. Its energy consumption is relatively high, which will cause heat dissipation issues and elevate the equipment's temperature." Sure enough, Biss, who had been monitoring the data, murmured, "The energy consumption is 4.15% higher than the standard, and the equipment temperature is also a bit high. Is there a problem? Are you using the standards of quarter power dock to evaluate my equipment? Then why don't you buy it at quarter's price? I can handle the heat dissipation, so just bring me the money." James Bond grabbed Biss and shoved him against the wall, seething with anger. "Target locked. The Corellian Galaxy, the planet terrorists. This guy is hiding there," Gabriel Tosh reported. "I've already notified Scarlet Dawn. The kidnapping will be completed within an hour. Monitor him first. Don't kidnap him. I have a plan," James Bond instructed. "Don't add unnecessary details," Nova interjected, displeased. "Kidnapping him will alert others, and we can't confirm if he can really lead us to the galaxy where the Republic Expeditionary Fleet set off. We only have one chance, and we need to be cautious. Catch him directly in front of me, and I'll extract everything from his brain," Nova insisted. "But there's a good chance his head will turn into mush, right?" James Bond retorted. Ignoring Nova, he tossed Biss aside and declared, "The transaction is over. Get lost." "I thought we could have a pleasant cooperation," the broker said, oblivious to the fact that Blood Dawn, the largest gang in Corellia, had quietly set a trap. He was still sipping fine wine in his secret base, triumphantly discussing business. Didn't the test just now go very well? Aside from the appearance of your products, everything else is perfect. As for the appearance, just add an outer shell and polish it. The original plan was to send agents to kidnap him after pinpointing his location. Discovering he was in the Corellian system made things easier. In Corellia, whether it was Dryden Voss's Blood Dawn or Mrs. Vixie's White Worm, they excelled at kidnappings and had already formed a close alliance with Tang Xiao. Letting them handle it was convenient and quick. It seemed this unfortunate dark broker was destined for such a catastrophe. "You are a bunch of vulgar, unreasonable, and unprofessional pirates," James Bond snapped. "A competent middleman capable of managing such a massive project wouldn't be as clueless as you. The transaction is over. Get out." "I think we can still have a good discussion. The price is negotiable," the broker said, enticed by the tractor beam's performance. "If you really need cash, I have 1.5 million credits here. If you're worried about the other part of the payment, I can also provide equivalent goods if you don't trust the Republic's credit notes." James Bond seemed tempted. He paused, turned around, and said, 2 million credit ingots. I can accept second-hand military spaceship parts as payment. Also, I want to see with my own eyes what you have done. This big project. I won't deliver it until I confirm it myself." "You're putting me in a difficult position, Mr. Chettery," the broker replied. "You know what I'm worried about. You don't have to be afraid. I will go alone. If you are worried about leaking secrets, you can temporarily detain me. In short, I must confirm what you do." The broker hesitated for a moment and then said, "I can provide some videos and photos of the scene." "Don't send them to me. I don't know how to receive or read them. Stop playing these tricks with me. As long as I take a look, you will be considered as telling me, right?" James Bond directly refused to accept the files. The broker was silent for a long time before finally saying, "Only you, and you can't bring anything. Everything will be arranged by me, and I also need to take a big risk. The credit ingot can only give you 1 million at most this time." James made a gesture indicating he still wanted to negotiate. "I said I would." "This is my fina little offer, Mr. Chettery," the broker interrupted him firmly. "Then deal," James agreed reluctantly. Chapter 1646, Brave and Fearless. "Prepare 5 tractor beam generators. I want to take them there," James Bond said, his mind resolute. "They've already left, so you don't have to be so hard on yourself," Nova said, waving her hand dismissively. "And this will make my mind a little quieter. You going alone is very dangerous. What Voodoo sees is not a good result," Gabriel Tosh warned. "This is the best way. After I get to that place, only if I go in person can I adapt to the situation and find a way to send the message," James Bond replied firmly. "Well, we will also meet you at any time," Nova said, moving to the console and pressing a button. "Come and meet old friends." Only then did James Bond notice a golden spaceship approaching slowly, docking with his transport ship. There was a slight jolt from the docking bay, and moments later, 2 Protoss wearing simple armor walked in. It was the Dark Templar Sora Ah and Ola Khan. "Protoss?" James Bond was a little surprised. Protoss willing to move outside is rare. In fact, I think 99% of the people in the Duchy of Dawn don't know the existence of Protoss. "It seems that you have forgotten me, friend," Ola Khan's voice echoed in James Bond's mind. "So, you were there during the mission where I died." James Bond smiled. "You are an excellent fighter, not only brave, but also wise. It is our honor to experience your sacrifice." Sora Ah also paid tribute to him. "The 4 of us will go with you," Nova said. Standing there was the golden lineup of Duke Li Xingming, including Ghost Agent Gabriel Tosh, Ghost Agent Nova, Dark Templar Sora Ah, and Ola Khan. This could be said to be the strongest infiltration and intelligence lineup in the Principality of Dawn. Looking at the entire galaxy, only Quinlan Voss, an intelligence master in the Jedi Order, could possibly compare with them. However, James Bond shook his head and refused. "I will only act alone, and I will strictly abide by the agreement of the Dark Broker. This is the only way we can enter that place. We cannot be sure whether the other party has a Dark Jedi Knight. If they do, it would be a complete failure if you were exposed." "What he said makes sense," Gabriel Tosh agreed. He's just an ordinary person. He can't complete such a task. Nova snorted coldly. Just a few properly trained clone soldiers can catch him. Why should I confront those clone troopers? James Bond smiled. Nova's face was uneasy. You must know that we have spent a huge price to find such a middleman. Once this opportunity is missed, then we can only confront the absolutely superior forces of the Galactic Republic in the model sector. I believe in the judgment of this warrior, and I am willing to provide you with all assistance. Dark Templar Olakan said. We can install a positioner on the tractor beam generator, Gabriel Tosh suggested. If you don't want to challenge the IQ of the intelligence personnel of the Galactic Republic, I suggest you not do this, Nova said coldly. So this is what I worry about. All our success or failure is now placed on such an ordinary person. I will not waste this opportunity, James Bond smiled, just as I would never disappoint a beautiful lady like you. One day later, after negotiating the transaction method with the dark broker, James Bond took 5 tractor beam generators alone, boarded a spaceship to the agreed place, and embarked on an unknown journey. On July 27, 20 BBY, when the number 3 star of the Yago-Dur galaxy passed the central star at a distance of 273 million kilometers, the close proximity of the 2 stars caused their solar wind radiation to interfere with each other, resulting in a massive radiation storm. However, the location of this radiation storm was far from the current positions of the warring parties of the Galactic Republic and the Principality of Dawn, so the interference was minimal. The main issue was that communication had been affected, and the hyperspace channel was temporarily unavailable. Gideon Tarkin, the commander of the main fleet, the fleet of the 20th Army of the Republic, under the command of Gideon Tarkin, prepared for a decisive battle against the fleet of the Principality of Dawn. After careful consideration, Tarkin ordered all warships to launch a 3-pronged attack. With continuous reinforcements over the past few days, his fleet now boasted over 200 warships, giving them a significant advantage over the defense fleet of the Duchy of Leeming. However, the swarm drones launched from the Consul-class aircraft carrier of the Principality of Leeming remained a major concern. These drones seemed endless, swarming in dense formations that posed a deadly threat to Tarkin's fighter formations. The V-19 fighters were particularly vulnerable, reduced to mere targets in the face of the drones. Even the V-wing fighters, which could barely maneuver around the drones, fared little better. Losing air supremacy to these drones was a constant fear, especially since their plasma rays had proven capable of threatening even capital ships when present in sufficient numbers. Adding to Tarkin's worries were the 2 massive Argonev-class interstellar bases on the outskirts of the Yago-Dur planet, and the formidable presence of 20 disaster-class battlecruisers. These factors made Tarkin hesitant to commit his entire force against Matt Horner. Tarkin was aware that the reinforcements from the Galactic Republic would be limited. He had received news that the battle in the Mordal sector had begun, which would draw some of the Principality of Dawn's forces away, preventing them from fully reinforcing their position. However, the battle in the Mordal sector was organized by the Kuat Power Shipyard, a group of merchants whose combat effectiveness was questionable. Moreover, their involvement in the Mordel sector indicated that their industrial production capacity would not be available to support Tarkin's efforts in the short term. Governor Octavian Grant of the 20th Army had informed Tarkin that the next reinforcement plan would see a reduction in the number of reinforcements, focusing on small and medium-sized warships. The only potential advantage lay in the participation of several Defender-class heavy cruiser prototypes. These prototypes, produced by the emerging Sina Fleet Systems Company, were being sent for actual combat testing. Sina Fleet Systems had promised that if the test results were favorable, they could send an additional 10 prototype ships within a month. End of this chapter. Chapter 1647, Yago-Dur Artillery Battle, 2. In 1647, during the Yago-Dur Artillery Battle, Gideon Tarkin, the frontline commander of the main fleet of the 20th Army, faced a challenging situation. He knew that the forces under his command were unlikely to see a significant increase in strength in the near future. So, when astronomers observed a burst of electromagnetic radiation as two stars approached, Tarkin decided to seize the opportunity and launch an attack. In his view, the harsh environment would force even the Galactic Republic's fighters to operate cautiously, limiting their ability to perform missions far from their motherships. Essentially, they would lose their effectiveness as the main attacking force. He believed that the smaller swarm drones would fare even worse, likely being unable to take off at all. With this in mind, Tarkin decided to gather his troops and engage in a decisive battle. Under Tarkin's command, the Galactic Republic assembled a formidable fleet of over 200 warships, including 19 Knight-class Star Destroyers, 77 Jaeger-class battlecruisers, 1 Commander 2-class Dreadnought, and more than 60 Aquatens-class light cruisers. This powerful force advanced directly towards the enemy. On the other side, Matt Horner of the Duchy of Dawn, commanding a fleet of about 100 warships, ordered a strategic retreat. He exposed the 2 Agniev-class interstellar bases to absorb the enemy's firepower while using the other warships for long-range fire support. However, Tarkin had anticipated this move. He ordered his fleet to conduct long-distance orbital bombardments on the planet Yago Dur, essentially saying, "If you don't come out, I'll bomb you to death." But the inhabitants of Yago Dur, the Jiwan people, were well prepared. They had taken refuge in cities deep within the planet's crust, which had been artificially reinforced to withstand such bombardments. Additionally, Yago Dur had a powerful planetary shield. It's important to note that the term Star Destroyer, used by the Galactic Republic Navy at this time, referred to ships capable of devastating a planet's surface, not blowing it to pieces. The appearance of the Death Star, a weapon capable of destroying entire planets, shocked the galaxy. Later, during the Galactic Empire's reign, some super battleships were developed with the capability to destroy planets, but these were rare and not mass-produced. For example, the Empire-class Star Destroyer, with its 60 XX-9 heavy turbolaser cannons, was designed for orbital bombardment, essentially burning the planet's surface. As the Galactic Republic fleet launched its assault, the distance between the two fleets decreased, and the exchange of fire intensified. Despite the threat posed by the 20 disaster-class battlecruisers, Tarkin was pleased to see the 375-meter-long Archon-class aircraft carrier retreating and hiding behind the Argonev-class starbase, avoiding the Republic's firepower. Notably, the Archon-class aircraft carrier did not deploy its swarm drones, boosting Tarkin's confidence. He immediately issued numerous orders. First, he assembled 20 Aquatens-class light cruisers and 20 Carrack-class light cruisers to form a high-speed assault fleet, targeting the disaster-class battlecruisers to disrupt their particle light spear bombardment. Simultaneously, he concentrated all firepower on the separatist Number B Argonev-class interstellar base, the smaller of the 2 interstellar bases, with a side length of 10,000 meters. Gideon Tarkin believed it was better to break one of the enemy's fingers than to hurt all 10. He planned to gather superior forces and firepower to directly eliminate one of the interstellar bases. This time, he had no intention of using any tricks. His goal was to annihilate all enemies standing in his way. Unlike other Galactic Republic admirals, Gideon Tarkin had been focused on logistics since the start of the war. He established a forward base in a nearby uninhabited galaxy as a transit point and relied on shield ships to set up a frontline supply base in the Yago Dur galaxy. His strategy was to fight a protracted war. For him, the Republic's reinforcements were unlimited, but the Separatists on Dawn Planet did not have the same advantage. This was his core strategic thinking. Even if he were to be defeated in the end, destroying one of the opponent's interstellar bases would be a significant victory. He could then withdraw the fleet, repair the lightly damaged warships on the spot under the cover of the shield ship, and drag the severely damaged warships back to the forward base for overhaul. They would then wait for more reinforcements. Although the speed of reinforcements had slowed due to issues at the Kuat Power shipyard, the Galactic Republic's military would not let this problem persist. There were many large industrial companies in the galaxy, so solutions were inevitable. For example, the upcoming Defender-class heavy cruiser from Sienna Fleet Systems. However, for the Separatists, building another interstellar base in the Yago-Dur galaxy was no longer possible. Countless artillery shells rained down on the interstellar base, creating numerous energy ripples on the deflector shield. Although the base's firepower was also formidable, Gideon Tarkin believed it could not withstand the continuous bombardment for long. At the four corners of the interstellar base, 4 massive pulsed laser cannons fired continuously. These cannons were actually sets of quadruple laser emitters. When connected in parallel, the power of the emitted lasers increased exponentially. This same technology was used on the Ankron-class Titan battleship, as only a large enough energy core could support such a massive launch unit. Each shot from the pulsed laser caused immense damage. A Hunter-class battlecruiser was cut into 2 pieces under continuous irradiation, even before its shield was broken. In terms of single-shot power, the pulse laser cannon of the interstellar base far surpassed the particle light spear. Suffering huge losses, Gideon Tarkin ordered all warships to concentrate their firepower. To strengthen the attack, he even risked the interference of electromagnetic radiation storms and launched a group of Y-wing bombers. These bombers would not stray far from the mothership, but would surround the battleship as mobile proton torpedo launching platforms. Since the interstellar base was essentially a fixed target, it could be hit regardless. The swarm drones had not yet taken off, which was Gideon Tarkin's greatest reliance. Meanwhile, on the bridge of the flagship, Matt Horner turned on the communication and asked, "Can you?" "Yes," replied a female voice with a hint of electronic modulation, unemotionally. End of this chapter. Chapter 1648, Yago-Dur Artillery Battle 3. Matt Horner took a deep breath and asked the adjutant beside him, "How long can the deflector shield last for Interstellar Base B?" According to the current attack intensity, the Republic fleet will launch a large-scale salvo in 5 minutes. It is estimated that the deflector shield of Starbase B will be destroyed within 7 to 9 minutes, the adjutant replied. Matt Horner raised his wrist, adjusted his watch, and commanded loudly, "Notify all ships to immediately enter attack positions. In 10 minutes, launch a counterattack." "Yes, sir." Meanwhile, Bahel Barnacle, a mathematician at Jiwan University, holding a scepter, announced, "The intensity of this electromagnetic radiation storm will reach its peak in 37 minutes. "That's better," Matt Horner's eyes sharpened. Gideon Tarkin, excited by the opportunity to exploit this abnormal astronomical phenomenon, had underestimated the Jiwan people. Having lived in the Yago-Dur galaxy for tens of thousands of years, their observation and prediction of such phenomena were meticulous. They could calculate the motion of 3-body stars with over 80% accuracy, making the prediction of an electromagnetic radiation storm a trivial task. Boom, 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 boom. Inside Interstellar Base B, even though the powerful deflector shield and thick armor blocked most of the energy shockwaves, the violent explosions caused constant minor earthquakes within the base. "Quick, get into position immediately. The shield is about to break." The damage control team hurriedly moved with numerous engineering robots to their designated areas, ready to handle the imminent bombardment directly against the armor. "The number 7 shield capacitor compartment is on fire. Put it out quickly. The number 7 cabin is inaccessible. Open the airtight cabin and let the vacuum extinguish the fire. Then the number 7 compartment is completely lost. That's better than losing another damage control team. The capacitance of number 9 compartment exceeds the limit. Cut off all connections immediately." The shield maintenance department in the interstellar base was extremely busy. They had to manage fires and explosions in the capacitor compartments caused by explosive heating while keeping the shields operational. The ultra-high temperature capacitors, once replaced, were launched as high-explosive bombs rather than being cooled down, making use of the extreme heat. In a structure as massive as the interstellar base, several mass accelerators were positioned near the shield capacitor compartments. This allowed the shield maintenance department to launch these burning capacitors, providing a way to vent their frustration and boost morale, even if the hit rate was low. Boom! An extremely violent explosion occurred, followed by more than a dozen heavy turbo laser cannons striking the armor belt of the interstellar base. The unprecedented noise and vibrations echoed throughout the base. "The shield has been broken. Prepare for impact." Boom, 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 boom. More artillery fire rained down on the thick armor belt of the interstellar base, continuously blowing out destroyed armor and turrets. As the shield of the interstellar base was breached, the warship commanders of the main fleet of the 20th prepared for the next phase of the battle. The army of the Galactic Republic was even more excited. They seemed to envision the complete destruction of the interstellar base. Meanwhile, the high-speed assault fleet dispatched by Gideon Tarkin began to approach the disaster-class battlecruiser formation. To avoid losing their precious particle light spears, the disaster-class battlecruisers moved closer to their other warships. This maneuver stretched the defensive fleet's resources even thinner. On the Archon-class aircraft carrier, Admiral Matt Horner's wristwatch vibrated slightly. He waved his hand vigorously and shouted, "All troops, counterattack immediately. Swarm drones, take off." "Of course," responded a female voice with an electronic tone. As the order was given, countless drones flew out from the hangar platform of the bombarded Number B interstellar base. These drones, equipped with 2 sets of engines on either side and a thick barrel in the center resembling a telescope or a Q-version fly, swarmed out in numbers exceeding 20,000. The swarm drones immediately rushed towards the Galactic Republic warships, launching dense plasma rays that created hedgehog-like light bands around the battleships. The Republic fleet was caught completely off guard by the sudden appearance of the swarm drones, as they were focused on bombing Starbase B. The swarm drones tore through the Republic fleet's defenses almost instantly. Gideon Tarkin's fear of the swarm drones wasn't due to their overwhelming power. While the plasma rays from the drones were indeed potent and could threaten warships, they were not as dangerous as the proton torpedoes carried by bombers. However, the main warships of the Republic Navy had significant flaws in their anti-aircraft firepower. This defect allowed the swarm drones to cause substantial interference, leading to heavy losses from the separatist particle light spears during fleet battles. For instance, the most advanced Knight-class and later Empire-class star destroyers of the Galactic Republic Navy had 40-point defense guns and 60 XX-9 heavy turbolaser guns for anti-aircraft firepower. The other 60 plasma cannons were too slow to be effective for air defense. The XX-9 turbolasers, originally designed for air defense, could reduce power and increase the rate of fire to create a dense barrage. However, if the XX-9s were engaged in other tasks, such as orbital bombing or attacking ships, the star destroyers were left with only 40-point defense guns, significantly weakening their air defense. This vulnerability was exploited when the Republic fleet focused on bombing the Number B interstellar base, leaving them exposed to the swarm drones' attack. End of this chapter. Chapter 1649, Yagodur Cannon Battle 4. In Gideon Tarkin's fleet, almost all the warships aimed their turbolaser cannons at the Number X-9 heavy turbolaser, continuing to bombard it relentlessly. In such a situation, facing the sudden attack of the swarm drones, the entire Republic fleet was dumbfounded and unable to take any effective actions at all. The Knight-class ships still had 40-point defense turrets, but the Jaeger-class battleships, which relied entirely on their carrier-based aircraft for air defense, were even more vulnerable at this time. Facing the attack of the swarm drones, the Republic fleet fell into chaos almost immediately. These drones had flown out of the Number B interstellar base and rushed into the array of the Republic fleet as soon as they launched. With the frenzied bombing of more than 20,000 drones, each Republic warship was targeted by over 100 drones on average. Such a saturation attack was simply not something they could handle. At the same time, under the command of Matt Horner, the Duchy of Dawn's fleet launched a resolute counterattack. No matter how badly these battleships had been suppressed by the Republic fleet before, they didn't care now. Even if the battleships were severely damaged, they rushed forward and bombarded with the main artillery that was still in good condition. Even the 20 disaster-class battlecruisers, which had been evading the Republic's high-speed assault fleet, stopped their evasive maneuvers and began outputting particle light spears at full capacity. The fighter jets guarding the Republic battleships were almost completely wiped out in just 20 minutes. These fighter jets struggled to connect in the electromagnetic radiation storm and couldn't get guidance from the mothership's flight control management, ultimately flying around and fighting on their own. After the initial wave of raids, more than 5,000 swarm drones rushed towards the Republic's high-speed assault fleet, which was engaged with the disaster-class battlecruiser formation. The performance of the Artanis-class light cruisers and Carrack-class light cruisers of the high-speed assault fleet was even more dismal. Even the Carrack-class light cruiser, known for its high speed, couldn't fully utilize its advantages against the extremely fast and flexible swarm drones. The high-speed assault turned into a high-speed escape. After being entangled with the swarm drones for a while, these light cruisers realized they had no chance of winning and quickly turned around, fleeing towards their main fleet. The confident offensive of the Republic fleet was completely disrupted. This sudden change shocked the commander of the Republic fleet, Gideon Tarkin. He rushed to the radar and shouted, "This is impossible, impossible. Even our fighter jets can't fight, so how can these little drones?" "I don't know. Strong electromagnetic interference still exists. Even the communications we send to other warships are being interfered with," said the communications officer. 2/3 of the size of those microdrones are engines, and they are equipped with extremely powerful plasma rays. At first glance, the drones are completely dependent on remote control. How can they be so flexible in such an environment? Gideon Tarkin was so angry that he even wanted to accuse the separatists of cheating. "General, the high-speed assault fleet is turning around. The power generation inquiry has not been answered yet. There are still 107 warships that have not responded via communication. Communication system interference has increased." "General, not good. The power of the electromagnetic radiation storm is increasing. Our normal communication is also affected. Fighter formation confirmed unable to take off." Gideon Tarkin looked at the densely packed radar screen, his face contorted with frustration and disbelief. Gideon Tarkin stared at the holographic star map, his face contorted with frustration. The map was constantly disrupted by interference, but the swarm of drones remained as fast and coordinated as ever, seamlessly executing their maneuvers despite the raging electromagnetic radiation storm. "Retreat, retreat immediately. Preserve your strength," Gideon Tarkin ordered decisively. "General, I can't confirm whether the message has been conveyed. The interference is too strong," his adjutant reported, sweat dripping from his brow. "Turn this ship around, fire a thermal flare, and notify all warships to retreat," Tarkin commanded. 5 flares of different colors were launched from the flagship of the Republic fleet, the Commander II class dreadnought. The flares burned brightly, like miniature stars, signaling the retreat. The dreadnought began to turn, abandoning the fight and heading towards the rear. Due to the communication interference, only some of the Republic warships noticed the signals and began to retreat. Many others continued to engage blindly, unaware that their flagship had already withdrawn. Meanwhile, on the flagship of the Duchy of Dawn fleet, the Consul-class aircraft carrier, Matt Horner, was issuing orders. "Fire the signal flare and tell all ships to attack with full force. Destroy as many Republic warships as possible." "General, the communication interference has increased. We can no longer communicate normally," the communication officer reported. Matt Horner nodded, exhaling a long breath of relief. "Okay, this has bought us a little more time. Now, we just wait for the planet to change orbit." He reached for the communicator, but reconsidered due to the interference. Shaking his head, he turned and walked towards a cabin behind the bridge. Taking a heavily guarded elevator and passing through several security doors, Matt Horner arrived at a sealed cabin. Through the spherical glass door, he saw a woman standing inside, a pale-skinned Zabrak woman. She was Maris Bruder, once an apprentice of Master Shak Ti. During the war on Kamino, Maris Bruder had fallen to the dark side under the influence of the Dream Sisters and joined the Fourth Civilization. She had been assigned to Darth Lilim's subordinates, but since Darth Lilim went north, Maris Bruder had disappeared. Now, she was here, connected to countless data cables, with hundreds of long needles piercing directly into her brain. "Start the self-examination and confirm the impact of the electromagnetic radiation storm on you," Matt Horner said coldly. The Zabrak woman, now a mere tool, elicited no sympathy from Horner. In his eyes, she had never been trustworthy, having joined him hastily and without loyalty. Now, connected to the Consul-class aircraft carrier and serving as the command center for the swarm drones, she was simply a useful asset. Chapter 1650, Archon-class aircraft carrier. Matt Horner's primary objective in coming here was to collect real-time combat data, specifically the combat data of swarm drones. These drones were controlled by the pale-skinned Zabrak woman standing before him, Maris Bruder, who was Shakti's apprentice. The Protoss had indeed handed over the technology of swarm drones to the Fourth Civilization. However, the technological systems of humans and Protoss were so vastly different that even with detailed data interpreted by the Protoss, it couldn't be directly utilized. Therefore, the chief engineer of the Fourth Civilization, Salarian Arroyo Barlow, had to make countless calculations and selections before he could preliminarily determine the platform for the swarm drones, the Archon-class aircraft carrier. Many technologies in the Protoss drone aircraft carrier were beyond the current capabilities of the Sirak tribe. Even if they could master it, building such a capital ship-level drone carrier with the Fourth Civilization's current technology was nearly impossible. Thus, they had to settle for the next best option. The Archon-class aircraft carrier, from the EVIV technology tree, was inherently a drone carrier, making it highly adaptable. As a drone carrier, it boasted a powerful command system and a split flight control system capable of handling the calculations for tens of thousands of drones fighting simultaneously. Additionally, it featured a remote control platform, allowing controllers to manually operate the drones. This dual command system, AI and human intelligence, made drone combat more flexible. Moreover, the Archon-class aircraft carrier had ample space and room for modifications. The modularity of the EVE spaceship allowed for easy replacements, making it feasible to modify it into the control core of the swarm drones. The massive 3,175-meter-long hull could easily accommodate the assembly line for 2 swarm drones. These were all logical steps, but the real challenge lay ahead. Protoss aircraft carriers typically had only one operator. This single operator managed everything, from piloting the aircraft carrier to directing countless interceptors in battle, and even overseeing the automated production line inside the battleship. This was possible due to the high intelligence and automation of the battleship itself, but more fundamentally because the operator was a Templar, a high-level Holy Church warrior. These warriors could create massive mental storms with a mere gesture, easily decimating small armies. Even before the destruction of the Jedi Order, the number of Jedi Knights capable of such feats was fewer than 10. This was the crux of the problem. The Protoss interceptors, the 1-meter-long miniature drones named swarm drones by the Fourth Civilization, were so powerful because they were controlled by psionic power. These drones, composed of 2/3 engine, 1/3 plasma ray, and a small receiver, were flexible and high speed, easily outclassing the main fighters of the Galactic Republic. According to current Protoss research, their psionic energy had much in common with the Force. This led to the conclusion that such ideal control was not something mechanical technology could achieve. The question then became, with aircraft carriers and swarm drones already in place, where could they find suitable controllers? When Arroyo Barlow reported this issue to Tang Xiao, Tang Xiao had a headache. There were very few Force-sensitive members in the Fourth Civilization. Obi-Wan Kenobi had abandoned his hermit disguise, and Satine Kryze, the Grand Duchess of Mandalore, had disappeared. Adi Gallia ventured alone to the dungeons of planet Terrace to break through the shackles of death. Darth Lilim had just completed her trial and was further strengthening her dark side power through a brutal massacre in the north. Additionally, the priestess Depa Billaba was now essentially the head of the Twilight Covenant. Ulu Ulex had been torn to pieces by the werewolf Jedi Master Wilf Mon on the planet Semirth, and his remains were so mangled that even Tang Xiao had no interest in resurrecting him. The Twilight Covenant and Ghost Academy were also problematic. The former consisted entirely of children, while the latter was made up of individuals whose midichlorian count was too low to make them Force-sensitive, relegating them to ghost training. These people were naturally of little use. After Order 66, Dawn Planet issued an announcement expressing its willingness to accept escaped Jedi Knights. However, the harsh reality was that none came. Despite the heartfelt and sincere notice from Dawnstar, it went unappreciated. Some surviving Jedi Knights fell to the dark side and joined Darth Sidious, while others also fell to the dark side and went to Count Dooku, the old elder of the Jedi Order. The rest went into hiding. In any case, no one came to Dawn Planet. The primary reason was likely Tang Xiao's identity as the Lord of Cece. Those willing to accept this identity naturally stayed in the Galactic Republic and did not venture to the galaxy's border. When the console-class aircraft carrier and swarm drones were presented to Tang Xiao, he had a massive headache. Finally, he thought of the Zabrak woman, Maris Brood. She was originally very unstable. During the battle on Kamino, she was dragged into the dark side by the Dream Sisters and then sent to Tang Xiao. Initially, Tang Xiao didn't trust her and didn't think much of her. He handed her over to Darth Lilim, intending for her to be Lilim's assistant. However, Tang Xiao soon became dissatisfied with Darth Lilim's cultivation of the dark side of the Force, and part of this dissatisfaction was directed at Maris Brood. He believed Maris Brood's unstable mind was a reason for Darth Lilim's insufficient progress. Thinking of this, Tang Xiao summoned Maris Brood to the Mothership Glory. Without further ado, he stabbed her to death with a sword. Then, he resurrected her using the resurrection technique and handed her over to Arroyo Barlow for research. At Matt Horner, and then returned her gaze to the control panel. Her face was pale, and beads of sweat dotted her forehead. "I'm fine," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I can handle it." Matt Horner frowned, clearly unconvinced. "You don't look fine, Maris. You're pushing yourself too hard. We need to find a way to distribute the load more evenly." Maris Brooder shook her head. "There's no one else who can do this. The drones respond to my force commands. Without me, they would be useless." Horner sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I understand that, but we can't afford to lose you. You're too important to this operation. We need to find a solution." Maris Brooder's eyes softened slightly. "I appreciate your concern, Matt, but right now, we have to focus on the mission. The Republic won't wait for us to figure things out." Horner nodded reluctantly. "All right, but promise me you'll take breaks when you can. We can't afford to have you collapse from exhaustion." "I promise," Maris said, though both of them knew it was a promise she might not be able to keep. As Horner left the control room, he couldn't shake the feeling of unease. The situation was far from ideal, and he knew they were walking a fine line. One misstep, and everything could come crashing down. Meanwhile, on the bridge of the console-class aircraft carrier, Arroyo Barlow was monitoring the battle through a series of holographic displays. The swarm drones were performing admirably, their coordinated attacks overwhelming the Republic forces. But Barlow knew that this success came at a cost. He glanced at the engineers from the Sirach tribe, who were busy fine-tuning the systems. They were efficient and focused, but there was a cold detachment in their demeanor. To them, Maris Brooder was just another tool, a means to an end. Barlow couldn't help but feel a pang of guilt. He had been the one to connect Maris to the drone control system, to turn her into this living weapon. He had justified it to himself as necessary for the greater good, but seeing her now, he wondered if he had made the right choice. As the battle raged on, Barlow's thoughts were interrupted by a sudden spike in energy readings. "What's happening?" he demanded, turning to the nearest engineer. "Energy fluctuations detected between the drones and the carrier," the engineer replied. "It seems the remote energy transmission system is being activated." Barlow's eyes widened. "Is Maris doing this?" The engineer nodded. "Yes, sir. She's using her force abilities to enhance the drone's plasma rays." Barlow watched in awe as the drone's attacks grew even more powerful, cutting through the Republic ships with ease. But his awe was tempered by concern. How much more could Maris take? Back in the control room, Maris Brooder felt the strain of the energy transmission system. Her body trembled, and her vision blurred, but she pushed through the pain. She had to. The lives of her comrades depended on it. As the battle reached its climax, the Republic forces began to retreat. The swarm drones pursued them relentlessly, ensuring that no enemy escaped. It was a decisive victory, but it came at a high price. When the last of the Republic ships had fled, Maris Bruder finally allowed herself to relax. She slumped in her chair, her strength completely spent. Matt Horner rushed back into the control room, his face etched with worry. "Maris," he exclaimed, kneeling beside her. "Are you all right?" Maris managed a weak smile. "We did it, Matt. We won." Horner shook his head. "At what cost, Maris? You can't keep doing this to yourself." "I'll be fine," she insisted, though her voice lacked conviction. "I just need some rest." Horner helped her to her feet, supporting her as they made their way out of the control room. "We'll find a way to make this easier on you, Maris. I promise." As they walked down the corridor, Maris couldn't help but feel a sense of foreboding. The battle was won, but the war was far from over, and she knew that the hardest challenges were still to come. "Matt Ho." Arner looked at her with indifferent eyes. After confirming his authority, she responded in her electronic voice. "Self-examination complete. The force is operating normally. The burden on the nervous system is at 67%, which cannot support prolonged combat, but is sufficient for the current battlefield situation." Matt Horner nodded, acknowledging her capabilities. Despite her limited achievements during her lifetime, her talent and foundation were deep enough to be recognized by masters at the level of the Jedi Council. It was unfortunate that she had taken the wrong path and betrayed her master. Shortly after joining the Fourth Civilization, she was killed in the battle in the northern border. Now, connected to the battleship, her fate seemed a consequence of her own choices. Turning to the Solarian scientist behind him, Matt said, "We must ensure the safety of Maris Bruder. She is the only one who can control the swarm drones now. Our combat goal has been achieved in this battle, so we can use her more cautiously." "Understood. I will conduct a comprehensive physical examination on her. This will require recalling 1/3 of the drones to reduce her nerve pressure to less than 50%, the Solarian engineer replied. His voice still echoed in the air as his team moved to the other side and began their work. Matt Horner's judgment was sound. The battle's objective had been achieved, and the electromagnetic pulse storm had completely disrupted communication between the battleships, leaving each to fight independently. Command now rested on the bridge of each ship. The captains of each battleship would make their own judgments based on the battle situation. Those who saw the signal flare knew to continue attacking with all their strength. Matt Horner trusted that the well-trained captains would make the most appropriate decisions. Indeed, the battlefield had become chaotic. The swarm drones were wreaking havoc, and the relentless bombing left the Republic warships almost incapable of fighting back. The desperate counterattack launched by the Duchy of Dawn's fleet inflicted significant losses on the Republic warships. Even without an order from Republic Commander Gideon Tarkin, the captains of these warships could see that the battle was unwinnable. The sight of the massive Commander II-class dreadnought beginning to turn around only solidified their decision to retreat. Gideon Tarkin's previous worries were unnecessary. Almost all the captains of the Republic warships concluded that retreat was the only option and began to pull back. This was good news for the Republic fleet, which had been on the verge of defeat. As a result, the battlefield now saw the numerically superior Republic fleet turning to retreat, while the Duke of Dawn's fleet, though inferior in strength, pursued them frantically. End of this chapter. Chapter 1652, Yagodur Cannon Battle. The main fleet of the 20th Army of the Galactic Republic retreated in a panic. They had already realized that they had no chance of winning, so almost all the captains of the warships made the choice to flee. However, for the Dawn Principality fleet under the command of Matt Horner, this was not good news. He had hoped that in such a chaotic situation, more warships of the Republic would stay to fight to the death. Unfortunately, those captains were not fools. They knew when to retreat. As a result, the battlefield once again became a scene where the Republic ran and the Duchy of Liming chased. The Knight-class Star Destroyers, which had fought the most fiercely and had the fiercest firepower before, were still at the forefront. They couldn't be blamed for this, as almost all the weaknesses of the Knight-class were exposed during the escape. The Knight-class Star Destroyer, due to its unique shape design, had no fire coverage at the rear of the battleship. To put it bluntly, the general shape of the Knight-class is a downed square cone. No matter how many turrets you arrange on the surface, you can't cover the direction of the rear. This design flaw was actually the result of Lila Blissex, the chief designer of Kuat Power Dock, who overcorrected based on the Hunter class. As we all know, the frontal firepower of the Jaeger class is not strong, and the rear arrangement of the main guns prevents the battleship from exerting all its firepower when facing the enemy head-on. However, the shape of the Knight class allows it to fully utilize its firepower when facing the enemy head-on. The price is that there are dead spots in the firepower, and there is absolutely no way to deal with targets in the rear. This is not only a problem of not being able to fight back when fleeing in a fleet battle, but also because enemy fighters can approach calmly from directly behind the Knight class. By the time the Knight class anti-aircraft firepower can reach the fighters can already launch proton torpedoes directly. Now, like the battlefield on the planet Anji, the Jaeger-class battlecruiser once again exerted unexpected power in this escape situation. The hull of the Jaeger-class battlecruiser is basically flat, so as long as the bow is raised, its 8 main guns can easily fire to the rear. This posture does not cause a great loss of propulsion. However, seeing dozens of Jaeger-class battlecruisers uniformly retreating while raising their bows and firing backwards, the scene was quite ridiculous. Although the swarm drones were still chasing after them, their energy was quickly exhausted, and they began to return. After all, the fleet of the Principality of Dawn was insufficient, and when communication was disturbed and there was no unified command, it was unable to fire salvos and sink enemy warships faster. Coupled with the very decisive retreat of the Galactic Republic fleet, they eventually only wiped out about 1/3 of the warships of the main fleet of the Republic's 20th Army. For this result, Matt Horner was not surprised. He understood that with the strength of the fleet in his hands, it was not easy to fight to this level. It was entirely the result of the right time, place, and people. However, the gap in military strength between the two sides was too great. Even with such favorable conditions and extremely brilliant results, it still could not bring victory. Even the interstellar base B had been severely damaged, and the deflector shield could not be restored in a short period of time. This would definitely be remembered by the Republic fleet. Gideon Tarkin's judgment was very correct. As long as an interstellar base in the Dawn Duke's defense line was destroyed, it would be a major setback. The defense system of the Yago-Dur planet has a significant deficiency. This overlooked interstellar base poses a serious hidden danger. If Gideon Tarkin is not a fool, he will conduct ultra-long-range continuous bombardments on this interstellar base. Space battles. IELDs have a unique characteristic. In a vacuum combat environment, if precision is not a priority, attacks can reach unimaginable distances. Under such circumstances, fixed or regularly moving targets like planets and interstellar bases are highly susceptible to ultra-long-range bombardments. For light-speed weapons such as particle light spears, maintaining energy focus over a distance of 1 light-year is still at the level of black technology. Therefore, the Republic fleet only needs to continuously fire turbolaser cannons and long-range missiles to perpetually threaten this interstellar base. Matt Horner faces 2 options. The first is to lower the number B interstellar base to the synchronous orbit of the Yago-Dur planet. This would indeed alleviate the bombardment from the Republic fleet. However, during an attack, the interstellar base constantly orbiting the planet would have much less room to maneuver. Additionally, when Yago-Dur's planet changes orbit, this interstellar base would almost certainly be thrown out during the process, with a high probability of being hurled into the star. The second option is to withstand the bombardment. By using the deflector shield to calculate a point and gathering all near-fire forces for continuous concentrated interception, they could endure the attack for several days. After careful consideration, Matt Horner chose the first option. He believes that lowering the number B interstellar base to the planetary synchronous orbit will be interpreted by the commanders of the Galactic Republic as an act of fear, thereby reducing their vigilance. This would also allow his fleet to relax a bit and face the next counterattack in a better posture. Meanwhile, on another battlefield a day earlier, On July DBBY, in the Mordel sector on the planet Anji, the Galactic Republic Expeditionary Force landed. Within 2 days, the clone army of the Galactic Republic on Anji exceeded 80,000 troops. The spotty clone soldiers, a quick clone secretly deployed by the Speaker of the Republic, Schiff Palpatine, were only revealed to the Parliament after production was completed. These clone soldiers can grow and mature in a year, but the force-feeding method of information input leads to some mental issues. Despite this, their strong physical fitness and relatively flexible battlefield judgment allowed them to defeat most robot legions on the front lines. With a massive production base, the Supreme Strategic Command of the Galactic Republic used spotty clone soldiers more roughly. Unlike the previous Camino clone soldiers, who had high mechanization and used ATT armored assault walkers down to the platoon level, the spotty clone soldiers often faced more direct combat. This is evident on the ground battlefield of Anji, where the spotty clone soldiers are engaged in intense combat. Chapter 1653, Anaji Meat Grind 1. Countless spotty clone soldiers of the Galactic Republic roared and charged, only to be mowed down in large numbers by the relentless counterattack firepower of the Anji planet defenders. The defenders' firepower points, however, were soon met with another wave of aerial bombing and sometimes even orbital bombardments. The powerful airstrikes completely obliterated the firepower points that the clone soldiers had risked their lives to reveal. Immediately afterward, more spotty clone soldiers surged forward. This ground combat tactic was developed by the Army of the Galactic Republic specifically for the spotty clone soldiers. To put it bluntly, it was because the spotty clone soldiers were not deemed worthy of being equipped with powerful mechanized armor forces, and strengthening air support was seen as a more effective strategy. The power of air support didn't need to consider the combat strength of the spotty clone soldiers. As long as the air power itself was strong enough, it was sufficient. Compared to ground-armored assault tactics, which required careful planning and training, the Supreme Strategic Command decided to abandon the idea of meticulously imitating the armored assault tactics of Dawn Planet after observing them several times. The defenders of planet Anji, however, were not to be underestimated. The fleet of the Principality of Dawn continuously attacked the Republic's expeditionary fleet, preventing them from focusing solely on orbital bombardments. Simultaneously, a large number of fighter jets took off within the atmosphere to intercept the attackers. Among these fighters, the SJF-14 fighter suddenly appeared. The SJF-14 fighter is the only combat aircraft in the atmosphere currently produced by the Fourth Civilization. It is an air superiority fighter from Homeworld, Deserts of Karak, produced by the Legion's land carrier. Due to its excellent performance in atmospheric conditions, the Fourth Civilization Army ordered it for air defense operations on some planets. However, the overall output of this fighter jet remained low because the Fourth Civilization Navy, the primary customer, did not prioritize atmospheric fighters. Senior naval generals, including Admiral Matt Horner, the Navy's commander-in-chief, considered this fighter jet as primarily defensive equipment, necessary only for defensive warfare. Most of the time, starfighters sufficed for battlefield needs, as they could also operate in space. The SJF-14 fighter, like the Phantom fighter, underwent continuous modernization. Despite its considerable size, with a length of 20 meters, it offered ample room for modifications. In previous battles, the Fourth Civilization rarely engaged in planetary defense, and places like Onderon Planet did not equip such conspicuous equipment due to concealment issues, so they hardly appeared. Now, the SJF-14D fighter made its presence felt on planet Anji. With excellent aerodynamic performance, it posed a significant threat to Republic fighter jets in atmospheric air battles. On the ground battlefield, although the spotty clone soldiers of the Galactic Republic continued to advance with powerful air support, they suffered enormous losses with every step forward. However, one thing pleased the commander of the Republic Expeditionary Force, Cassio Tag. As the Clone Legion expanded its control area on the ground, they managed to occupy 2 spaceports that the defenders had not destroyed in time. These spaceports were now being repaired by the engineering team with all their might and were expected to be operational soon. This development would alleviate part of the logistical support pressure, allowing the expeditionary force to receive supplies and rest. With such encouragement, Tang unscrupulously deployed his entire army on the battlefield. Around the planet Anji, the primary objective of the Republic's warships was to escort new transport ships through the Outer Fleet's defenses. These warships often acted as human shields to ensure the transport ships could land safely. Ground bombing missions were carried out using well-angled turrets. However, the defense system of the Duchy of Dawn was formidable. Thousands of Gauss defense platforms around the planet continuously fired their 500mm caliber electromagnetic cannons. The two 8-mounted missile launchers also launched relentless missile attacks. Additionally, the Gauss defense platforms on the planet were equipped with two near anti-laser cannons integrated into the overall air defense system. The heroic and fearless attacks by the Dawn Principality fleet, combined with the powerful orbital defense system on Anji and the Argonev-class interstellar starbase in synchronous orbit, inflicted significant losses on the Republic Expeditionary Force. The cost of deploying 80,000 clone soldiers to the front line was the destruction of 7 Jaeger-class battlecruisers, 1 Cheer-class assault landing ship, and over 20 transport ships. More than 30,000 clone troopers perished when their transport ships were destroyed in the air without firing a single shot. Tang, however, was undeterred. He knew his forces were strong but faced supply difficulties, which reduced his fleet's durability. Determined to secure a stable supply base, he was willing to occupy the planet Anji at any cost. To him, the spotty clone soldiers were merely consuming resources, so he decided to send them all to the planetary battlefield. "You have quite a lot of demands, Matt Horner," Darth Malthael said coldly, staring at the holographic projection of his Navy Commander-in-Chief. The Fourth Army and the Injori Avengers were meant for the final counterattack, and now you want them? The Fourth Legion and the Injori Avengers are crucial for my next phase of the battle plan. I hope you fully consider our current situation, Matt Horner replied seriously. The Republic fleet in the Yagodol galaxy has always employed steady tactics, making them very difficult to deal with. Don't forget that the Republic's fleet invading the Mater Star area is more than twice the size of the one in Yagodur, Darth Malthael retorted coldly. I only want the Fourth Legion and the Injori Avengers, nothing else, Matt Horner insisted. What did the General Staff say? Malthael inquired. Chief of the General Staff Chi Jian said that the Fourth Legion and the Injori Avengers are under your direct command, so your approval is required, Horner explained. First, you take away the only Archon-class aircraft carrier we have, and now you want the Fourth Legion and the Injori Avengers? You're quite the negotiator, Matt Horner. Maybe you should report to the Ministry of Commerce after this battle, Malthael said sarcastically. My lord, please approve, Horner requested earnestly. End of this chapter. Chapter 1654. A Naji Meat Grinder. 2. Approved? Approved for what? Darth Malthael sneered. Approved to report to the Ministry of Commerce? My lord, this is my battle plan. Please have a look. Despite Darth Malthael's ridicule, Matt Horner remained composed and presented his battle plan. Darth Malthael examined the plan, his expression growing serious. After a moment, he spoke slowly. Do you understand what your plan entails? If you fail, you will lose the entire fleet, the Fourth Legion, and all of the Injori Avengers. His eyes, cold and piercing like a snake's, bore into Matt Horner. And regardless of the plan's success, the 2 interstellar bases will be sacrificed. If the Republic's 20th Army makes a comeback, the Givens will have no choice but to surrender. Losing the Givens means losing an excellent core race, our Titan battleship construction dock, and potentially leaking data on the Ankaran-class and Ragnarov-class Titan battleships. He shook his head, the threatening expression vanishing as quickly as it had appeared. I appointed you as the Commander-in-Chief of the Navy because I believed you were not like Severance Tan, who enjoys taking risks. You should understand that if the Fourth Civilization fails, it won't affect me. The real victims will be the civilians of this civilization, including you. If it weren't a gamble, it wouldn't be worth it, Matt Horner replied. In order to compensate for the loss of the Fourth Legion and the Injori Avengers, I might even need to go to the front line myself, Darth Malthael added. Thank you for your support, my lord, Matt Horner said, giving a solemn military salute. Darth Malthael waved his hand dismissively. I'll give you what you need. Go and arrange it. Yes, my lord. After ending the communication, Darth Malthael turned and walked out of the meeting room, heading towards the Combat Command Center. There, a large number of officers and staff were busy commanding the combat situation across countless battlefields on the planet Anji, from the ground to space. The entire war zone was in complete chaos. On the ground battlefield of planet Anji, there were more than 300 marked battlefields alone. In the outer orbit of the planet, around the landing ships and transport ships of the Galactic Republic, there were over 20 fiercely contested battlefields. The commander-in-chief, Volgograd Kennedy, was constantly issuing commands in front of a holographic battlefield map. He maneuvered the troops to create gaps or lure the enemy deeper, aiming to fragment the battlefield into smaller, more manageable pieces. Deploy Umbrella's armored lickers to Karma City. Make sure to airdrop them at night. During the day, the lickers are ineffective. Concerned about the spread of the T-virus, the spread caused by the lickers is negligible. We need to reserve the T-virus missiles for a pollution attack on the Republic's assembly area when the opportunity arises. Temporarily withdraw the anti-aircraft firepower near Mount Batty. I need to lure the Republic into establishing another landing field in that direction. Why send tyrants to Cabotown? Why not use this precious transport capacity for a Scorpion tank platoon? What? Tyrants equipped with rocket launchers? Then let them try. Where's the modified Thor mecha? Still on the Dawn Star? Inform the engineering department that if I don't see this mecha within 24 hours, their Grand Duke might die in battle. Darth Malthael's eyes twitched as he listened to Volgograd Kennedy's rapid-fire instructions, filled with strange and cryptic information. Kennedy, engrossed in his command, did not notice Darth Malthael's arrival. After issuing a series of orders, he took a moment to... Kennedy took a sip of the cold coffee on the table, his face serious as he observed the battle situation. He slammed his fist hard on the console and muttered to himself, "No! Not enough! Not enough! Not enough!" Darth Malthael walked over to stand behind Kennedy and asked, "Have Umbrella's reinforcements arrived yet?" "That's right. Although the little girl Shirley Birkin assured me that the BOW, bioorganic weapon, they manufactured has fully considered the modern battlefield and sent a large amount of goods, I'm still not sure what those monsters can do. I can only let them try first," Kennedy replied. "What did you send here?" Darth Malthael inquired with interest. After he killed William Birkin, he had no restrictions on that. Even the Umbrella Pharmaceutical Group, which was supported as a military-industrial enterprise, still placed high hopes on it. Because even without mentioning the powerful viruses that will appear in the world of Star Wars, just copying and pasting some of the top monsters in the Resident Evil series are super killers. In the previous battle, the Umbrella Pharmaceutical Group used the T-virus to disperse once, and the main product that appeared on the battlefield was the biological weapon Inquiry Avenger, which was a combination of the T-virus and the Injoli. And now, the Injury Avenger is being asked by Matt Horner to carry out his huge gambling plan. However, this time the model sector is facing an invasion, and the Umbrella Pharmaceutical Group, uncharacteristically, suddenly became high profile. Shirley Birkin even directly told Darth Malthael that her current BOW battlefield battles. This made Darth Malthael very interested. Kennedy casually glanced at the data next to him and said, 20,000 armored lickers, 1,000 tyrants who can use rocket launchers. A tyrant who can use a bazooka? A tracker? Darth Malthael asked. Yes, that's what it is, Kennedy continued. And then there are 10 Talos. I don't know what this is yet. I only see that there is some frick steel armor in the description. Looks like Shirley Birkin is trying to trick me. Darth Malthael couldn't help but feel a little disappointed. He said lightly, "You can count on these things, especially the Talos tyrant, but don't hold out too much hope. Where are the armored units?" Indeed, if Umbrella provides these things, it cannot be said to be useless, but it is hard to expect these BOBs to change the situation of the battle much. However, compared with before, it has indeed improved a lot. So at this stage, we still can only put our hopes on the Scorpio tank. The Republic firmly controls the air supremacy, and the Scorpion Tank Group assault means a huge risk, so I have dispersed the tank troops, mainly forming hundreds of mobile squads to harass the Republic's flanks and supply lines. The main goal is to delay time and allow the Republic Army to sink deeper and deeper into this quagmire, Volgograd Kennedy said. As he spoke, he called out the armored divisions currently on the planet's various battlefields. Darth Malthael looked at the holographic battle map, and even a layman in military command, after so many battles, he could see many clues. With your current deployment of troops, you don't consider counterattack at all, do you? He frowned and asked. If there is a counterattack, then the deployment of armored forces will not be spread out like this. Because according to the current battlefield situation, in order to defeat the Republic Army, it is necessary to use armored clusters to cooperate with fighter jets to quickly rush forward, directly cut off the connection between the Republic Army and the rear landing field, and then have a chance to win. Not enough! Not enough! As soon as this was mentioned, Volgograd Kennedy became anxious again. Not enough of what? Darth Malthael asked. Now we still can't defeat the army of the Republic, Volgograd Kennedy growled. According to your plan, you have let them land, and we also have cards in our hands that can be used to counterattack. Why is it not enough? Darth Malthael inquired. The Galactic Republic fleet is indeed dividing its forces, but even so, we can't defeat them. Their strength is still an absolute advantage, Kennedy responded. In this case, if we counterattack, we can only commit all our remaining power, which would cause the entire battle situation to completely collapse. The term complete collapse referred to the worst-case scenario in their overall battle plan. According to this plan, if the frontline battlefield was defeated, the Ankron-class Titan battleship would have to be transferred from planet Eliadu back to planet Dawn, thereby shrinking the frontline defense. This would leave only the Dreadnought-class heavy cruisers of the Vanguard fleet on planet Eriadu, making it impossible to resist the next attack from the Republic. The Duchy of Dawn would lose the vast territory it had gained through countless bloody battles since the beginning of the war. Is there any other way? Darth Malthael continued to ask. His expression remained inscrutable, revealing little about his feelings regarding the impending failure. Yes, let the Republic continue to divide its troops, Kennedy said firmly. Where else can they be divided? The industrial planet Orville III or the Vazian planet, the home planet of the Vathians, Darth Malthael asked. No, it must be attractive enough to the fleet of the Republic, and even after the division of forces, the new target must have enough strength to resist the fleet of the Galactic Republic. Volgograd Kennedy said, looking up at Darth Malthael with a hint of madness in his eyes. You mean, Darth Malthael began. That's right, it's Dawnstar, Volgograd Kennedy declared. Based on your words, I could kill you on the spot now, and the Supreme Court of the Principality of Dawn would not object, Darth Malthael said lightly. We are betting on the country's luck, but why not the Galactic Republic? Have you ever thought about what it will mean for the Galactic Republic if the expedition to the Mater sector fails again? Volgograd Kennedy argued, taking a different approach to convince Darth Malthael. The Galactic Republic will become a much more dangerous adversary, Darth Malthael acknowledged. Then this at least shows that this time we are enough to strike at their heart. Volgograd Kennedy almost gritted his teeth as he spoke. You and Matt Horner, in just 10 minutes, have placed me at 2 gambling tables where I am wagering my entire fortune, Darth Malthael said, smiling coldly. Beneath his expression, there seemed to be a wave of madness. The Anaki galaxy was turning into an enormous meat grinder. The Galactic Republic Expeditionary Fleet, which had landed on the planet Anji, looked at the blue planet as if a hungry, bloodthirsty shark was eyeing a bloody piece of meat. Yes, they were hungry, very hungry. Across the entire galaxy, from the most prosperous and core places to the most remote corners, their logistical pressure was immense, making normal replenishment nearly impossible. Therefore, occupying the planet Anji as a forward base when their military capacity was at its peak was their most urgent and desired goal. After severely damaging the Argonev-class interstellar base and forcing it into a planetary synchronous orbit, Commander-in-Chief Cassio Tag ordered his fleet to launch orbital bombardments immediately and to land as soon as the planetary shield was breached. However, the resistance on the planet Anji was also at its strongest at this time. On the first day of the landing, 2 Cheer-class assault landing ships were shot down by hidden J-1 proton cannons. One crashed directly, while the other made a forced landing, losing most of its functions and serving only as a transfer station with limited defensive capability. The Republic's air power had successfully bombed key targets, but achieving this came at a high cost. The fighter formation of the Republic suffered heavy losses against the formidable SJF-14 fighter jets on the planet Anji. Despite these setbacks, the Republic's army managed to secure a foothold on the planet's surface. However, this initial success was not enough. Upon landing, the Republic's spotty clone army faced a relentless counterattack from Anji's defenders. The defenders launched a fierce offensive, spearheaded by their Scorpion tanks, which at one point even broke through the clone army's defensive line. Recognizing the dire situation, Cassio Tag quickly dispatched over 1,500 fighter jets from the space battlefield into the planet's atmosphere to provide support. These jets bombarded the Scorpion tank formations and the siege tank positions behind them, effectively halting the enemy's advance. Concerned that the defenders might regroup and launch another powerful offensive, Cassio Tag devised a strategic plan. He ordered the Cheerer-class assault landing ships to work in tandem with transport ships to establish new landing points continuously. This allowed a steady stream of troops to be airdropped across various locations, creating a scenario where the Republic's forces were attacking from multiple fronts simultaneously. Chapter 1655, Tag's Adventure. Major General Cassio Tag, the commander-in-chief of the Republic Expeditionary Force, believed he had discovered a vulnerability in the defenses of planet Anji. Through careful observation, he noted that the anti-aircraft firepower in certain areas lacked persistence. After continuous firing, these defenses would weaken, creating exploitable gaps. This observation was reinforced by the initial counterattacks from the armored group composed of Scorpion tanks and siege tanks, which had managed to push the Clone Legion back to their spaceships. Cassio Tag conducted a thorough analysis of the battle situation and concluded that the separatist defenders on planet Anji were suffering from insufficient troops and supplies. This, he believed, was the reason for the intermittent anti-aircraft firepower. Emboldened by this insight, he made a daring decision to order more transport ships to land on the surface of planet Anji. His strategy was to exploit the gaps in the defenders' lines, forcing them to continuously divide their forces and thereby exposing multiple fronts. To ensure the success of his plan, Cassio Tag meticulously prepared. He analyzed every potential landing site and studied the defense layout of planet Anji using global scan data. He then devised a series of landing strike plans aimed at connecting his forces while penetrating deep into the defense system of Anji. As a top graduate of the Academy, Cassio Tag demonstrated his tactical prowess by personally crafting the landing plans for hundreds of sites, each chosen for its strategic importance. Cassio Tag was confident that if his forces could successfully land and unite their fronts, the defense of planet Anji would collapse. However, his adjutant, Laszlo Dolittle, a seasoned veteran of many Republic wars since the Stark Hyperspace War, opposed the plan. Dolittle argued that the plan was too risky. The Separatist fleet in outer space had not been decisively defeated. Although their Argonev-class interstellar base was severely damaged, their mobile fleet remained operational. Additionally, the planet was still protected by tens of thousands of Gauss defense platforms, and recent mine strike incidents indicated that the Separatists' air mines were still active. Dolittle pointed out that while battleships could detect and destroy air mines with their powerful radar and close-in weapons systems, transport ships lacked such capabilities. Even with battleship escorts, there would inevitably be gaps in coverage, and transport ships would be vulnerable to air mines. Increasing the number of escort warships would stretch the fleet's resources thin, impacting their ability to maintain air support and orbital bombardment on the ground. Despite the Republic's formidable expeditionary fleet, Doolittle warned that taking on too many tasks simultaneously would overextend their forces. They needed to suppress the Separatist fleet in space, provide air support, and conduct orbital bombardments, all while ensuring the safe landing of transport ships. The complexity and risks of the plan made Doolittle wary of its potential for success. The mission was not only to prevent assaults on their own transport ships, but also to clear the Gauss defense platforms and air mines in space and to cover the landing of the transport ships. This included providing orbital bombing and airstrike support. The last point was particularly challenging because the main tactics of the spotty clone troopers now relied heavily on air support rather than ground armor forces. Laszlo Doolittle pointed out that if General Tag truly planned to land on more than 100 landing fields, then on average, each field would have 20 fighter jets, totaling 2,000 fighter jets. This raised concerns about whether 20 fighter jets would be sufficient for ground support. Additionally, transferring these jets would result in inevitable losses, significantly impacting the strength of other battlefields. Laszlo Doolittle ultimately suggested that instead of hastily expanding the landing front, they should proceed steadily. He recommended establishing about 5 large landing sites with the help of orbital bombing and then advancing step by step. Even if the Separatists used their fast-moving and powerful Scorpion tank clusters to launch a counterattack, concentrating air power for bombing would mitigate the threat. Cassio Tag, after careful consideration, rejected Doolittle's suggestion. He acknowledged the merits of the plan, but argued that it did not align with the current battle situation. As an expeditionary force, they needed to secure a stable advance base as soon as possible, which meant occupying the planet Anji quickly. This would allow the Galactic Republic to send more reinforcements. Tag analyzed the recent reinforcement situation, noting that to maintain the Army's combat effectiveness, the number of warships sent from the rear had been reduced in favor of more transport ships. These transport ships, equipped with hyperspace stabilizers, faced significant risks. When returning, they had to navigate the unstable course of the model star area, once forcibly opened by Master Yoda. Currently, over 100 transport ships were missing or confirmed destroyed in hyperspace, highlighting the perilous nature of their supply line. Therefore, occupying the planet Anji was crucial. Its production capacity could alleviate some supply issues, and losing the planet would cripple the Separatists' ability to fight in this galaxy for an extended period. Once the remaining Separatist forces were eliminated, they could begin constructing another hyperspace stabilizer. Establishing two-way communication between the stabilizers would completely revitalize the current battle situation. In comparison, the current plan merely involved sacrificing the lives of spotty clone soldiers, which Tag deemed expendable. With this rationale, Laszlo Doolittle had no further arguments. Cassio Tag proceeded with his battle plan, increasing the landing force and launching simultaneous landings on dozens of battlefields. End of this chapter. Chapter 656. BOW plays. Under the command of Cassio Tag, the Republic Expeditionary Force's attack on the planet Anji had become even more intense. Cassio Tag initiated landings at dozens of sites on planet Anji simultaneously. Despite the losses sustained in the past few days, the Expeditionary Force still had 4 Cheers-class assault landing ships. Excluding the Commander 2 Dreadnought, the Republic Navy had never had a large number of these expensive warships. This meant that to land on dozens of battlefields, Cassio Tag had to use a large number of transport ships for direct landings. Consequently, he had to deploy a significant number of warships to escort these transport ships. This strategy dispersed the Republic Expeditionary Force's massive strength considerably. Even with battleship escorts, the transport ships, which had only basic defensive firepower, suffered heavy losses due to air mines. More than 30,000 clone soldiers perished in the cold expanse of space. Despite the heavy price, Cassio Tag's plan was advancing steadily. The Republic landing force continued to launch attacks to expand the front line, but the defenders of planet Anji were tenacious, constantly launching small-scale counterattacks. As the continuous battles raged on, the battlefield became increasingly fragmented. Eventually, there were more than 300 large-scale battlefields still active on planet Anji. Cassiopeia was pleased to see his plan succeeding, even as the number of casualties rose. The landing force of the Galactic Republic had made breakthroughs in many areas, and it seemed they were close to completely encircling the capital of planet Anji. Once the capital was surrounded, victory would be within reach. However, the Separatists understood this well, and their resistance grew more frenzied, preventing the final encirclement. In the outer city of Anji's capital, Kadi City, a burst of dense blaster energy beams flashed continuously. In the darkness of night, numerous figures fell as if they were being cut down like wheat. A group of spotty clone soldiers fired wildly at the front. The DC-15S blaster rifles emitted a barrage of red blaster beams, each causing a violent explosion upon impact. When these beams hit a human body, they would blow it apart. In the darkness, the scene was tragic. A large number of bloody, wounded, and hideous people rushed forward, only to fall under the relentless firepower of the clone soldiers. Among these people were many clone soldiers wearing white polymer alloy armor. These were zombies, T-virus zombies. Ah! The clone soldiers fired wildly, the pleasure from the constant killing stimulating their already unstable nerves, driving them to madness. However, as they concentrated on killing, several black shadows suddenly rushed down from the surrounding building's shadows. These shadows moved along the vertical walls as if walking on the ground. Though they were hard to see in the dark, their huge mutant claws were clearly visible. There are still monsters. A clone soldier reacted quickly, raising his gun to shoot. However, the blaster energy beams had no effect on the monsters. In the brief flashes of light, it was clear that these monsters were equipped with metal armor. In a matter of moments, the monsters rushed into the clone soldiers' position and began a frenzied massacre. The armor of the clone soldiers could withstand the attacks of the monsters' claws, but the monsters had high intelligence and a strong killing instinct. They targeted the gaps in the armor with precision. Even a minor injury from their claws would turn a clone into a walking dead within minutes. Soon there were no living soldiers left in that position. After the mutated zombies of several clone soldiers staggered away, the monsters, equipped with metal armor, let out a roar. Their long tongues swayed in the air like poisonous snakes. These were lickers, T-virus biological weapons. In the darkness of the night in Kadi City, countless monsters were carrying out this horrific slaughter. Meanwhile, in another direction, a clone commander leaned out from a TX-130 Saber hover tank, picked up his binoculars, and switched to thermal imaging mode to observe the battlefield ahead. It was a brutal killing field, with flames, dismembered bodies, and thick smoke everywhere. "Calculate the losses," the clone commander ordered. "We lost 2 Saber tanks, and our only ATE was also damaged. The engineer is repairing it," replied the clone trooper next to him. "What the hell are those monsters? Can they use rocket launchers?" the clone commander asked, still a bit surprised. "They barely resemble humans, but I don't know any humans that can grow to over 2.5 meters. They are obviously cyborgs," the clone soldier explained. "Humph. No matter what they are all targets in front of our tanks," the clone commander said proudly. Just moments ago, they had been suddenly attacked by a large number of 2.5-meter-tall mutant giants wearing fur coats, all armed with M41 double-barreled rocket launchers. There were hundreds of them. The rare armored troop of the spotty clone army immediately launched a counterattack, and the two sides exchanged fierce fire. Although the armored troop suffered some losses, the mutated giants were soon wiped out. This seemingly easy victory made the clone commander extremely proud. He waved his hand and said, "Ha ha ha! This is a big victory. Immediately report the victory to headquarters and have them send someone to deal with the scene. We will move on after resting for half an hour. We were notified just now that Kadi City was also attacked by monsters." "Yes, sir," the soldiers responded. Huh? A clone driver poked his head out of the Saber tank and made a doubtful sound over the communication channel. "What's wrong, SC-2227? the commander asked. "It's nothing. I seem to remember that there was a mutant giant's corpse under this collapsed wall. Why is it gone now?" the driver said, his voice tinged with confusion. Forcibly pouring a large amount of information into their brains had significantly reduced the thinking ability of these soldiers. The driver looked again, but found nothing, so he returned to the cockpit and said, "Forget it. I guess I remembered it wrong." Chapter 1657, Suspicion. The flagship of the Galactic Republic Expeditionary Force, the bridge of the Commander 2 class Dreadnought Tag. General, the Separatists have launched a counterattack in 17 directions on the battlefield, Adjutant Laszlo Doolittle reported, handing a battle report to the Commander-in-Chief, Major General Cassio Tag. 17 directions. Cassio Tag repeated, taking the personal terminal from Doolittle. He input the data into the holographic combat map in front of him, updating the battlefield information. He studied the map with a solemn expression. On this global holographic combat map, the information displayed is not always real-time. In space battles, warships serve as combat units, and the transmitters installed on them update their status to the flagship's command center in real time. Even if a signal transmitter fails, the flagship can still use its radar system to determine the ship's position, though it won't know the ship's status through radar alone. The situation becomes more complicated with fighter formations. Although equipped with real-time signal transmitters that send back data, including position, speed, status, and even the pilot's heart rate, the battlefield is rife with electronic interference. This means the data from fighter formations is not always real-time. Despite the Galactic Republic's more powerful V-Wing fighters, they still cannot gain an absolute advantage over the Separatist Ghost fighters. The main issue is that the radar on the fighters cannot detect the stealth Ghost fighters. While the battleship's radar can detect them, the data sent to the fighters is often disrupted, making commands from the flight control system intermittent. Ground operations present an even greater challenge. Clone soldiers' armor includes positioning devices, but these are easily interfered with. It's common for a unit to lose contact for half a day. Additionally, enemy interference often causes errors in the global positioning system, leaving troops unaware of their exact location even when in contact. Cassio Tag faced this problem. Although he had successfully opened up hundreds of battlefields, as the battle progressed, some troops began to disperse due to pursuit or retreat. Now, there were more than 300 warring areas. The battlefield, being on the Separatist planet, had unprecedented electronic interference. The combat map in front of Cassio Tag contained information that was 2 hours old. The more this happened, the more anxious Cassio Tag became. He was eager to know the current situation and when the capital of planet Anji could be encircled. He longed for a decisive victory, hoping to make planet Anji the first brilliant victory in his military career. But now, he was receiving news of counterattacks in 17 directions. In the complex environment of the ground battlefield, such immediate reports of counterattacks indicated only one thing. The situation in these areas was critical, and the ground force commanders were desperately seeking reinforcements. The problems in these areas are not significant. Our Air Force can handle them, Cassio Tag said. Actually, the Air Force couldn't resolve them, which is why they are asking for help. Adjutant Laszlo Doolittle replied. The areas are all in complex urban environments, or among jungles and hills, making airstrikes less effective, he began, sorting through the information for Cassio Tag. These directions here should be the Ewok army. They are very powerful in jungles and hilly areas. Their short stature makes them hard to find, and their thick fur makes them completely invulnerable to poisonous insects and wild beasts in the jungle. They are very adaptable to moving in complex terrain, making them difficult to deal with. Then blow up the whole jungle, Cassio Tag said with a frown. Here's the problem. It is almost impossible to blow up the entire jungle with our fighter jets alone. We don't have bombers in these directions, and there are hidden, separatist air defense positions around this jungle, making aerial bombing very difficult, Laszlo Doolittle explained. Then why do you have to forcibly go through this jungle? Can't you bypass it? Cassio Tag asked. The battle plan at the time was to go through this jungle, attack the separatist army in Katy from the rear, and cut off their supply lines. This was the result of our discussion, Laszlo Doolittle replied diplomatically. He didn't directly blame Cassio Tag for the plan. instead involving himself to make it more acceptable. It seems you made a mistake in your judgment at the time, Dolittle. Let's not make this mistake again, Tag said, finding a way to save face. But the purpose of this army is to reinforce the city of Kadi and capture it. If we take the city, we will be able to threaten the northwest side of the separatist capital area. But the problem is, there is no feedback on how the battle is going in the direction of Kadi City right now. Laszlo Dolittle's face grew serious. He touched his chin, covered with stubble of different lengths, and said in a deep voice, "Indeed, this is very concerning. The 77th Legion attacked Kadi City, but the last contact with them was 5 hours ago. They reported a T-virus mutant creature in the city, and were organizing a siege, expecting to wipe it out within 2 hours." He continued to look through the information. The 179th Armored Company on the southern plain of Kadi City sent good news 3 hours ago, saying they had wiped out a mutant giant army equipped with rocket launchers. However, the only AT walking machine in the company was damaged. They are resting in a nearby town called Cabo Town and will set off after repairing the walking machine. Individually, these pieces of information seem trivial and not something we need to deal with. But when looked at together, it feels like the Separatists are planning something in this direction, Laszlo Dolittle said. What action? T-virus? Zombies? Do you think those mutated creatures can pose a threat to our tanks and blasters? Tag sneered. Chapter 1658, The Threat of BOW. It's no wonder that Tag sneered at the T-virus, which once appeared on the battlefield and posed a significant threat to the army of the Republic. Since the T-virus first emerged, the Galactic Republic has taken it very seriously. They retrieved numerous samples from the battlefield for research and gathered extensive data. It should be noted that although the Galactic Republic has obtained T-virus samples, this does not mean they can reverse engineer the virus. To completely replicate the T-virus, the original virus must be purified and extracted. Otherwise, the mutated zombies will only contain genetic fragments of the T-virus. However, this has not prevented the Galactic Republic from understanding most of the T-virus's characteristics through extensive experimentation. They now know that the T-virus can only survive in the air for less than 5 minutes, making airborne transmission impossible. It is also known that while the T-virus can survive in water, it cannot be transmitted through it. Therefore, unless food contaminated with the T-virus is directly consumed, aquatic animals are rarely infected. The most violent medium for T-virus transmission is body fluids, such as saliva, blood, and even gastric juice. Objects infected by these mediums will mutate within minutes. According to experiments, Republic biologists have discovered that the zombies produced by T-virus mutations are merely byproducts and cannot form any significant combat power. The T-virus primarily produces biological weapons through mutation. However, these scientists also noted that the biological weapons mutated by the T-virus cannot withstand the shooting of the DC-15S blaster rifles equipped by active soldiers. Even under extreme conditions, the mutated entities cannot pose a threat to tank armor units. So are the scientists' conclusions about the T-virus dangerous? Absolutely, but this danger is mainly directed at civilians and cities. If an outbreak occurs in densely populated areas, it can destroy the entire social order in a short period. However, the response is straightforward. Proper input and prevention measures can avoid a sudden and large-scale outbreak. In this regard, Republic biologists have developed several drugs against the T-virus. These drugs can prevent infection for a period. After submitting their findings to the Supreme Strategic Command, Republic military scientists generally believe that the T-virus posed little threat to the army. Even if an entire city were infected, the combat capabilities of the TX-130 Saber tank and the ATTE Walker would allow a single armored company to wipe out the entire city with minimal effort. They also upgraded the full coverage helmet of the clone soldiers. The second-generation helmet fully considered the virus issue and could easily filter it out. Additionally, the simple respirators distributed to ordinary soldiers can adequately filter out the virus. Of course, departments at all levels of the Galactic Republic have not yet connected the Injori Avengers with the T-virus. They generally believe that the Injori Avengers are merely modified and strengthened Injori people. So it's no wonder that Cassio Tag sneered at the T-Virus. Regardless of the threat those mutated monsters might pose to his army, it is important to remember that this is happening on the planet Anji, the Separatists' own planet, and the capital of the Mordel sector, the only Gaia planet. If this battle were taking place on the mainland of the Galactic Republic, Cassio Tag would indeed be nervous and would need to act immediately. Deploy troops to contain the T-Virus outbreak. But now, Separatists are using the T-Virus on their own planet? Fine, let them. The casualties from the virus won't be Galactic Republic civilians, Cassio Tag ordered with a dismissive wave. Prepare all landing troops for biological and chemical warfare. Additionally, instruct the clone soldiers to show no mercy. If they encounter any suspicious targets, civilian or otherwise, they are to hoot on sight. Laszlo Dolittle, standing nearby, asked, "What about the jungle area?" "Mobilize some incendiary bombs from other theaters and assign them to the fighter jets for bombing that area," Cassio Tag replied indifferently. Dolittle frowned. "The jungle has large swamps. Incendiary bombs from fighter jets will have limited effect and could easily harm our own troops. Just inform them of our bombing plan. Tell them we will use air power to burn a path for them." Tag made the final combat decision. At that moment, a messenger staggered in, shouting, "General! General! Urgent news from Katy City." What happened? Cassio Tag immediately sensed trouble. The 77th Legion in Katy City has gone completely dark. We've received sporadic communications. All. The messenger was pale and incoherent. All what? Calm down. Laszlo Dolittle walked over and lifted him up. All screams, gunshots, and cries for help, the messenger stammered. There are also some sounds, not even human. He had heard the sporadic communications from the 77th Corps, and the voices had terrified him. How is this possible? How could the T-Virus monsters be a match for our army? Cassio Tag turned pale. Our weapons can easily destroy any mutated creature of the T-Virus. Send a reconnaissance plane immediately. Dispatch a squadron of the nearest LA assault transport to investigate the situation. Where is the nearest Chira-class assault landing ship? Can it be moved there? Cassio Tag was visibly shaken, but the veteran Laszlo Dolittle remained composed. Yes, sir. Also, continue to contact the armored troops south of Katy City. Tell them to reinforce Katy City immediately, no matter what happens. Meanwhile, inside the darkened city of Katy, chaos reigned. Shh! Blaster rifle fire erupted, taking down several lickers. But the clone soldiers who fired the shots felt no relief. They were retreating in panic. Quick! Get out of here! Get out of here! Those monsters are coming again! Grenade! Blow up those corpses! A soldier hurriedly threw a grenade at the licker's corpse. Boom! The violent explosion obliterated the corpse, scattering the armor that had been attached to the licker. However, the soldiers hadn't gone far when they heard heavy footsteps. Suddenly, in the darkness, about 4 or 5 meters above the ground, a pair of scarlet eyes lit up. End of this chapter. Chapter 1659. The Newborn Shirley Birkin. Before the clone trooper could clearly see what was in front of him, he heard a deafening roar. Boom! A rocket exploded immediately, and several clone soldiers around were blown away by the shock wave. Fortunately, the polymer alloy armor they wore absorbed most of the impact and blocked the flying shrapnel. Otherwise, it would have been a gruesome scene. With the light from the flames, they finally saw the terrifying figure before them. It was a giant nearly 5 meters tall, equipped with a complete set of armor. Most conspicuous was the large quadruple rocket launcher mounted on its right shoulder. Its left arm was even more exaggerated, nearly 4 meters long, ending in an oversized hand that seemed heavier than its entire body. This was the Talos Tyrant, TALOS, the ultimate weapon produced by the Umbrella Pharmaceutical Group using the T-Virus. It was a super biological weapon that perfectly combined chip implantation, mechanical control, and virus mutation. The sight of such a terrifying monster made the clone soldiers lose their will to resist almost instantly. Although they were clones, they were not devoid of fear, especially in the face of such a hopeless situation. Moreover, these spotty clone soldiers were not particularly mentally stable. "Retreat! Retreat!" the clone trooper shouted, firing all the weapons in his hands at the giant. Blaster rifles, grenades, and even a 6-barreled blaster machine gun were unleashed. But the intense firepower had no effect on the monster. The Talus Tyrant blocked almost all attacks with its enormous arm. The armor on it was made of frick alloy, which, if pure enough, could even withstand a lightsaber's slash. Thanks to the good relationship between the Duchy of Dawn and the Interstellar Banking Association, the Duchy had access to super alloys almost monopolized by the Association. Due to the scarcity of frick alloy production, it was impractical to use it for warships or tanks. Instead, the Interstellar Banking Association primarily used it to produce the high-voltage electric wand of the IG-100 guard robot to compete with the Jedi Knights. The output was limited, so it was mainly used for high-voltage electric wands and some robot armors. Now, with the appearance of the Talos Tyrant, these frick alloys finally came into play. The Talos Tyrant blocked the clone soldiers' strafing shots and charged forward with surprising speed. It knocked all the clone soldiers into the air with a sweep of its massive arm and grabbed 2 soldiers in its hands. With a single squeeze, the 2 soldiers were crushed into a lump of flesh under their armor. Facing this rampaging monster, the clone troopers fled in all directions. They simply didn't have enough firepower to deal with the Talos Tyrant equipped with frick alloy armor. The monster rushed forward, leaping several meters high, and then punched down with its huge arm, demolishing a nearby small building with a single blow. Despite their fear, the clone soldiers were well trained and quickly withdrew from the battlefield, using the rising smoke and dust as cover. They ran as far as they could until the footsteps of the Talos Tyrant gradually receded. Boom, boom, boom. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief as the sounds of the Talos Tyrant's footsteps faded. The remaining soldiers regrouped, and a sergeant said, "We need to join the main force. In our current state, we'll be easy prey for those monsters." "Do we even have a main force here?" a clone trooper asked. Everyone fell silent, the weight of their situation pressing down on them. Suddenly, a slight hiss emerged from the shadows. Hearing this sound, all the clone soldiers felt as if they had been drenched with a bucket of ice water, freezing in place. "The corpses of those monsters with long tongues just now, are you sure they were destroyed?" the sergeant asked in a low, trembling voice. "I threw 3 grenades at them." The soldier who had thrown the grenades replied quietly, his voice filled with uncertainty. But before he could finish, another roar echoed from ahead. "What?" A soldier immediately switched on his tactical flashlight and pointed it forward. There, standing in the middle of the road, was a ferocious and terrifying licker, seemingly taunting them. The creature was horrifyingly mutated. From beneath its damaged metal armor, a layer of horny skin had grown, reflecting the flashlight's beam. "Quick, kill it!" the sergeant ordered. Everyone opened fire immediately. However, the energy beams from their DC-15S blaster rifles had little effect. The licker's horny skin provided excellent reflective heat insulation, significantly reducing the power of the blasts. The licker sprinted forward, moving faster than a car. "Quick, kill it!" the sergeant repeated. Under the intense firepower, the licker's cuticle finally broke. It fell to the ground and slid forward a few meters before coming to a stop. "It's over?" one of the clone troopers asked, barely able to believe it. Before they could catch their breath, more roars erupted from above. They quickly turned their heads and shone their tactical flashlights upward, revealing dozens of lickers clinging to the outer wall of the building above them. All of these creatures had also mutated, growing a layer of cuticles that could resist blaster fire. "Ah!" Terrible screams echoed through the dark night, mingling with the sounds of gunfire, explosions, and more screams, filling the dark city with chaos and terror. As the document I provided shows, the biggest selling point of the BOW produced by our company is not their combat capability. Shirley Birkin said calmly in the holographic projection. She adjusted her glasses, her white coat pristine. Their effectiveness on the battlefield relies on 2 main points: self-sustainability and variability. Volgograd Kennedy looked at the young, beautiful woman who seemed as cold as an iceberg, feeling a chill run down his spine. "Self-sustaining? Does that mean they don't need resupply?" he asked. "That's correct. While BOWs may not be able to match aircraft, tanks, and armored vehicles in direct combat, They have a significant advantage over those pieces of equipment, which are useless without logistic support, Shirley Birkin explained. On the battlefield, BOWs can consume almost anything organic as an energy source. You can deploy them behind enemy lines and leave them there. When you return after a few months, you might find some interesting surprises. Chapter 1660, another Shirley Birkin. You mean they eat corpses? Volgograd Kennedy asked, his voice tinged with disbelief. The corpses are just part of it, Shirley Birkin explained. The products created by the T-virus can absorb almost all organic matter. They can even perform photosynthesis. The ancestor virus, the predecessor of the T-virus, was derived from a species called the solar ladder. The RNA virus substance was extracted from the flower of this plant, which is why the T-virus exhibits some plant-like characteristics. So, as long as there are people, animals, or even plants around, they can continue to survive. And because they are biological weapons, their destructive power comes from within and doesn't depend on external supplies at all, Kennedy mused, shaking his head. Indeed, in this way, BOW has become the best choice for direct delivery to the enemy's rear. However, biological weapons can't fight against tanks and armored vehicles. How do you solve this? Variability is the biggest trump card of T-virus biological weapons, Shirley Birkin said. T-virus biological weapons rely on instinct, and biological instincts are determined by DNA and RNA. Evolution and reproduction are the two highest instincts of creatures. Therefore, for T-virus biological weapons, once they are fatally hit, they will instinctively evolve in response. What do you mean? They get killed by blaster guns and then evolve into blaster guns. Kennedy asked, still confused. No, it means that if they are killed by a blaster, they will absorb the damage attribute of the blow and evolve to counteract that attribute. For example, if the main damage of the blaster is high temperature and explosion, they will evolve to counteract that damage. So even if they are eliminated, they can still be resurrected, and not just resurrected, but stronger than before. Kennedy exclaimed. That's right. As I said, if the DNA structure of the T-virus biological weapon cannot be destroyed, then as long as they can get energy, they can continue to mutate, Shirley Birkin confirmed. Then these biological weapons could continue to evolve until they destroy a planet, Kennedy said, horrified. It's not that exaggerated. The extent to which they can evolve depends on how much energy they can get. Once the demand for evolution exceeds the supply of energy, that evolution will collapse, and everything will start from scratch. But in the process, they will have caused enough destruction, Shirley explained. She began to show various hideous and terrifying T-virus monsters that had mutated in some experiments. Volgograd Kennedy looked at the young woman in her early 20s. Her long blonde hair was simply tied up and she wore a pair of glasses. Her beautiful and delicate face, along with her fair and delicate skin, seemed almost doll-like. She was wearing a white coat and a brown skirt, sitting on a small swivel chair with her legs crossed, calmly describing these extremely terrifying, murderous monsters. This weapon was developed by your Umbrella Corporation? What are you thinking? What kind of person can create such a thing? Volgograd Kennedy found it difficult to accept. When those armored lickers, trackers, and Talos tyrants were sent over, they looked scary, but relatively normal. Only now did he realize that once these monsters mutated, they would become so disgusting and terrifying. It seemed as if countless organs were mixed together in various distorted ways, completely challenging the bottom line of being human. But this young woman, who looked so beautiful, actually called this evolution? Tang Xiao was also present, but remained silent, listening quietly. He was not surprised by the current state of the T-virus biological weapon. After all, in the original plot of Resident Evil, Umbrella Corporation was as unacceptable as a street rat, yet they continued to develop and evolve. With the support of the Fourth Civilization, the Umbrella Pharmaceutical Group can now conduct research and development openly, allowing them to create even more terrifying biological weapons. These weapons can continuously mutate and evolve in response to attacks, a characteristic that must be the ultimate form they are pursuing. But this is far from over. Tang Xiao knows that he has provided Shirley Birkin with a wealth of resources, including superweapons that were nearly insurmountable in the original Resident Evil plot. He is particularly interested in Shirley Birkin's transformation. It is not entirely accurate to call it a transformation, as the reference point is Shirley Birkin from the original Resident Evil storyline. In that plot, Shirley was implanted with the G virus by her father, William Birkin. After William's death, no one knew the full effects of the virus. Shirley spent her childhood and youth under strict surveillance by the United States, essentially under house arrest. The education she received was dictated by the U.S. government, shaping her into a kind and brave individual willing to fight against the proliferation of biological and chemical weapons. However, Tang Xiao did not allow her to follow that growth curve. Shirley was awakened as an appendage of William Birkin when she was only about 10 years old. She grew up in an environment where the development of biochemical weapons had no limits. After William Birkin's death, Tang Xiao directly put her in charge of the Umbrella Pharmaceutical Group. With control over such a massive pharmaceutical group and access to countless core biotechnologies provided by Tang Xiao, Shirley Birkin has fully displayed her genius and become a calm, even indifferent woman in power. Now she can discuss terrifying biological weapons with a calm demeanor. Kennedy only thought about the potential killings these weapons could cause, but he didn't consider the countless human experiments conducted during their testing and manufacturing. The current Shirley Birkin is a completely different person from the one in the original plot. "Do you know which direction of evolution I like the most?" Shirley Birkin said with a smile. "I think you will soon see the battle reports of those trackers against the armored forces of the Republic." Two TX-130 Sabre hover tanks were driving slowly through Cabo Town, their drivers watching the surroundings vigilantly. "Car number 7 has lost contact. Where did those monsters come from?" The captain's voice was full of fear. "It's the giants with the bazookas," the gunner said, trembling. "How is this possible? Those mutant giants were wiped out. But they came back to life again. These monsters can't be killed at all. Wait a minute. Target spotted ahead. Fire!" The commander suddenly saw a heat source on the detector screen. Boom! The gunner pressed the button almost instinctively, and the laser cannon of the Sabre tank fired instantly. A beam of light shot out, and the ultra-high temperature compressed air caused combustion the moment it hit the target. No, the target is not eliminated. It is approaching at high speed. End of this chapter. Chapter 1661, The Dilemma of the Expeditionary Force. "Impossible! That shot should have hit!" the driver exclaimed in shock. However, there was no time to dwell on it as a terrifying monster rapidly approached. This creature had completely lost its human form, moving on all fours. Only its twisted and horrifying head hinted at its origin as a mutant giant, once clad in a fur coat and armed with a rocket launcher. Now, its body was covered in writhing mutated substances that resembled grotesque muscles. These mutations had significantly enhanced the monster's strength and explosive power to terrifying levels. The monster's body was also covered in pustules filled with yellow-green pus, which looked extremely disgusting. One of the pustules had already ruptured, oozing a foul fluid. "Fire!" the commander ordered again. The heavy laser cannons on both sides of the TX-130 Sabre tank fired once more. At that moment, the monster seemed to sense the danger and leaped to the side. Only one of the laser beams hit, striking a pustule on its body. The pustule exploded instantly under the laser's heat, releasing a stinking liquid that did not vaporize immediately despite the ultra-high temperature. The boiling hot liquid flowed on the ground, emitting yellow-green smoke that was undoubtedly toxic. "The attack is ineffective. Hurry up, continue to fire," the commander shouted. But before he could finish, a loud bang shook the vehicle. "It's on our tank," someone yelled. The monster had already leaped onto the tank's body. Due to insufficient energy and speed, it had not triggered the deflector shield. "It's strong acid. Those liquids contain strong acid," the driver exclaimed. Although the armor was not corroded, the thick smoke clearly indicated the danger to human flesh. But it was too late to worry about that now. The monster was already tearing apart the TX-130 with its giant claws. In actual combat, the TX-130 primarily relied on deflector shields for defense. However, these shields had a high activation threshold, requiring a certain speed and energy level to trigger. If the threshold was too low, the tank would be immobilized in complex ground environments. This left the TX-130 Saber tank vulnerable to these mutated pursuers. These monsters were stalkers. In their first form, they were already powerful, capable of crushing reinforced concrete with a single punch. They also had a considerable IQ, could perform basic friend or foe identification, and could use rocket launchers. However, against the armored forces of the Galactic Republic, they were still weak. In the initial wave of attack, they only managed to destroy 2 TX-130s and damage an ATTE's mechanical leg before being wiped out by heavy laser cannon fire. The power to crush reinforced concrete was insufficient against real armored units. But as Shirley Birkin had warned, this was only the beginning. The trackers, reduced to cinders by the laser cannons, began to mutate further. The fur coats they wore were suppression devices, preventing them from mutating during transport and harming their own. Now, with the fur coats burned away by the laser cannons, the true horror of their mutations was unleashed. There is no longer any limit to the mutation of these trackers. Due to the high temperature of the laser cannons, they have mutated to resist them. Unlike blaster rifles, laser cannons are soft kills, so the trackers have developed large tumor-like pustules on their bodies. These pustules act like reactive armor. When hit by a laser cannon, they burst, releasing venom with a boiling point of several hundred degrees. This venom neutralizes the high temperature of the laser cannon, preventing the trackers from being harmed by the extreme heat. Moreover, because the previous attacks were lethal, the T-virus in the trackers' bodies deemed them still not strong enough. Consequently, they mutated to become bigger, stronger, and more agile. These mutated trackers have become the nightmare of the TX-130 Saber suspension tanks, which rely entirely on deflector shield, DS for defense. One could see a mutant tracker using its immense strength to tear off a laser cannon from the side of a TX-130. It then began to relentlessly batter the vehicle's body. The thin armor, designed only to defend against blaster machine gun fire, could not withstand the mutant tracker's assault and became dented. In desperation, the tank's captain opened the hatch and attempted to shoot with a blaster rifle, but a tracker grabbed him, pulled him out of the vehicle, and tore him in two with a sickening crack. Roar! The smell of blood drove the tracker into an even greater frenzy. Elsewhere in Cabo Town, the only ATTE walker of the armored company had collapsed, thick smoke billowing from it. 5 mutated trackers were absorbing the corpses of the crew members on the ground, replenishing the energy consumed by their mutations. They didn't eat with their mouths, but instead covered the corpses with mutated substances, assimilating them directly. After consuming enough corpses, one of the mutated trackers lay on the ATTE walker and stopped moving, while the others were drawn to another TX-130 tank, fleeing at high speed. They howled and gave chase. General, we finally received news from the Cabo Town Armored Company. The signal soldier ran over quickly to the commander-in-chief. Cassiotag. Speak. Cassiotag already had a strong sense of foreboding. They are asking for help. Only 7 TX-130 tanks are left, the communications soldier said urgently. They reported being attacked by monsters that cannot be eliminated and are becoming increasingly terrifying. They are advancing towards Katy City to join the 77th Legion. What? T-virus? Is there any battlefield data? Laszlo Dolittle asked hurriedly. No, the tank responsible for the battlefield record was destroyed. We have nothing on the current battle situation except their verbal description, the communications soldier replied. Where's the reconnaissance plane? Cassiotag raised his voice, addressing the team in contact with the reconnaissance plane. The correspondent took off his headphones and turned back. According to the battlefield situation sent back by the reconnaissance plane, there is no sign of any fighting in Katy City. They are conducting more careful reconnaissance, but the situation is not optimistic. It seems that Katy City is lost. If Cabo Town is included, there will be a huge gap in our encirclement in this direction. Our battle in the eastern part of the capital of the planet Anji was already not going well. If we lose the direction of Katy City as well, our entire encirclement network will be in vain. Laszlo Dolittle said solemnly. This also meant that Cassiotag had taken a huge risk, and the plan to launch landing operations from hundreds of battlefields simultaneously was completely bankrupt. Another signalman turned his head and said, "General, the battleship Zieg just sent a message." They briefly scanned a large separatist convoy before losing the signal as it entered the range of Katy City. They suspect the convoy is delivering supplies to the planet's capital area. These separatist lunatics, they actually used the T-virus on their own planet. Cassiotag's eyes were red with anger. The failure of his plan smoldered in his heart, almost turning him into a volcano ready to erupt. "Bastards! Order our troops to suspend the attack and wait for reinforcements to land. We must avoid the separatist T-virus biological weapons causing greater damage." "General, we still have a chance," Laszlo Dolittle interjected. "I believe those T-virus monsters are only effective in complex terrain. We need to immediately attack the Katy City area, including Cabo Town, and carry out indiscriminate orbital bombardment over large areas. But what about after the bombing? If we don't send troops to block it, the separatist transport team can still pass through the bombed zone." Cassiotag slammed his fist on the console. "And to block the bombing zone, we need more troops. We have no shortage of troops. We just need to temporarily cut off the capital area's supply. Then we can seize this opportunity to directly attack and occupy the capital." Laszlo Dorit said firmly, "Since we've chosen a swift battle, we must see it through to the end. Now is not the time to slow down our attack." Cassiotag's face was clouded with uncertainty. The battle situation was so complicated that his military academy training offered no guidance. Despite having studied countless battle cases since the founding of the Galactic Republic over 20,000 years ago, none could tell him what to do now. The strange T-virus biological weapon left him at a loss. He didn't know its full capabilities, strengths, or weaknesses, making it impossible to devise a targeted strategy. The 77th Legion, deployed in the Katy City region, had over 9,000 troops, and the entire army was wiped out. The biggest problem with the T-virus was its contagiousness. What if it spread to the rest of his troops? This was why he ordered all troops to stop attacking and defend in place. He feared that continuing to deploy more troops would accelerate the T-virus's spread. However, another piece of information finally made Cassiotag decide. A warship escorting one of the transport fleets to the Anji system destroyed a sneaky separatist transport ship. Among the wreckage, they found the body of a T-virus biological weapon. The Hunter-class battlecruiser recovered the corpses and handed them over to the scientific research team for study. The warship notified headquarters, urging Cassiotag to pay attention. This was just one discovered spaceship. Who knows how many other separatist ships had quietly sent biological weapons to the planet Anji? If such biological weapons proliferated on Anji, Cassiotag's only option would be a devastating orbital bombardment, completely destroying the planet's surface. While he could establish an advance base in such a barren galaxy, it would require building another hyperspace stabilizer, a massive project. Once he ordered the rear to start transporting various parts of the stabilizer and a large number of engineering teams, it would be a significant undertaking. Cassiotag knew that if his fleet focused solely on the hyperspace stabilizer, they would be left without supplies for an extended period. The ideal scenario was to capture the planet Anji, allowing his fleet to replenish and repair there. Factories on Anji could produce the simple parts needed for the stabilizer, easing the burden on rear transportation. Therefore, Cassiotag was reluctant to destroy the planet unless absolutely necessary. Yes, Cassiotag's expression was grim. "Formulate a plan. We will launch a direct assault on the capital of Anji without a complete encirclement. Don't worry about whether the capital can receive reinforcements. Even if they keep adding reinforcements, how can the combat power of a single planet compare to our fleet?" "Understood. I will instruct the staff to draft an attack plan within 2 hours," Laszlo Dolittle replied immediately. Despite his reluctance to engage in such an uncertain battle, the emergence of biological weapons in the Katy City area and the confirmed destruction of the army there left him no choice. Otherwise, they would be perpetually plugging holes with no end in sight. Cassiotag also had reservations about the plan's reliability. He called a space combat staff officer and ordered, "Have our fleet organize an immediate attack." Try to create a bombing window to precisely target the Katy City area from orbit. The staff officer hesitated. General, given the current rotation of the planet Anji, Katy City is on the opposite side of our fleet's deployment area. We would need to deploy more warships to force an attack and enter synchronous orbit. Alternatively, we could wait 13 standard hours for the planet's rotation to bring Katy City into a more favorable position for bombing. Xiao Tag considered the options. Deploy the additional warships. We cannot afford to wait. Ensure the attack is precise and effective. Yes, General, the staff officer responded, saluting before hurrying off to relay the orders. As the fleet prepared for the assault, Xiao Tag's mind raced with the potential outcomes. Success would mean securing a vital foothold and resources, but failure could spell disaster for his entire campaign. The stakes had never been higher. Chapter 1662, General Ground Attack. After some maneuvering, Xiao Tag, the commander of the Galactic Republic Expeditionary Force, once again assembled an assault fleet composed of 60 battleships and launched a fierce attack on the planet Anji. This attack confirmed what Volgograd Kennedy had previously stated. Even though the Galactic Republic had diverted a considerable part of its attention to landing operations, their strength still far surpassed that of the Dawn Principality's defensive fleet. 60 capital ships brazenly broke through the fleet defenses of the Principality of Dawn, approached the planet's low Earth orbit, and began orbital bombardment of the ground battlefield. The bombardment didn't last long and didn't use maximum power, but it still caused devastating damage to the Katy City area, engulfing almost the entire city in flames. In the burning city, lickers could be seen running around, covered in flames, only to be obliterated by a new round of bombing. The supply team that had previously passed through Katy was also completely destroyed during the bombardment. Immediately afterward, under the cover of numerous fighter jets, the Galactic Republic once again sent a large number of transport ships to land on the planet's surface. At the same time, a Cheer-class assault landing ship moved towards the Katy City area in the atmosphere, preparing to hover over the airspace to provide fire support. One after another, CSS-1 Republic-class transport ships landed, opened their hatches, and a large number of spotty clone soldiers disembarked, regrouped into formations, and then scattered to expand their control area in all directions. These spotty clone soldiers, in terms of both numbers and equipment quality, were far inferior to the Camino clone soldiers in their prime. The former were more numerous, while the latter were of much higher quality. Few soldiers could take the LAAT assault transport boat for rapid airborne landing, and there were very few armored troops accompanying the landing. Most simply filled the cabins of the CSS-1 transport ships and then landed directly, like driving ducks out of the cabin. However, it was undeniable that there were indeed enough of them. Xiao Tag was determined to re-establish the front line in the Katy City area and directly invested 4 clone legions in this direction, totaling more than 38,000 troops. The combat goal of these troops was not just to blockade, but to stabilize their landing field as a strategic rear and immediately prepare to attack the capital of the planet Anji. Everything awaited the order of Major General Xiao Tag. On July 34th, 20 BBY, the 8th day after the start of the ground battle on planet Anji, Xiao Tag issued a general attack order. Around the capital of planet Anji, apart from the east and southeast battlefields that had been suffering counterattacks and were unable to successfully close the front, the Galactic Republic divided into 9 groups and launched a full-scale attack from several other directions. The total force was 170,000 clone troopers. 3 Cheer-class assault landing ships floated in the sky, providing fixed air fire support in 3 directions. In a higher extraterrestrial orbit, Xiao Tag also gathered the power of 80 warships to attack the synchronous orbit over the capital of the planet. Once these warships entered synchronous orbit, they would carry out orbital bombardment of the capital district. In addition to the warships in this direction, there were more than 140 warships scattered in several other directions to ensure smooth transportation at the landing site. In total, there were 220 warships, all of which were battleships. The resistance of the Principality of Dawn was fierce. Under the command of Volgograd Kennedy, the Principality of Dawn assembled 40 capital ships and 110 small and medium-sized warships to launch a desperate counterattack. Although the fleet of the Principality of Dawn may be small in number, but under the excellent command of Volgograd Kennedy, it has proven to be a formidable force. Under his leadership, the fleet continually shifts its targets, either splitting into smaller groups to harass the Republic's transport fleet and destroy their supply ships, or consolidating to launch powerful attacks on the Republic's warships, attempting to breach synchronous orbit. In these chaotic battles, the Hells Angels-class battlecruisers stand out. These heavily armored battlecruisers have become a nightmare for the Galactic Republic's warships. With their formidable firepower and thick armor, they wreak havoc whenever they charge into the Republic fleet's formation. If there were more than the current 10 Hells Angels-class battlecruisers, the Republic fleet would struggle to resist. Even with just 30 of these battlecruisers, the Cassio-Tag fleet, which relies on Jaeger-class battlecruisers, would not dare to approach planetary synchronous orbit. The Republic's transport ships fear the Hells Angels-class battlecruisers the most. Once these battlecruisers locate a transport fleet, they charge at full power, and the surrounding Republic escort ships are unable to stop them. In the naval hierarchy of the Principality of Dawn, only the Hells Angels-class battlecruisers truly serve as assault ships. Other warships, including the Behemoth class, are more geared towards providing fire support or serving as versatile units on the battlefield. The Hells Angels class, however, epitomizes the concept of assault. Despite this, the powerful Republic fleet maintains a firm advantage on the battlefield. Each battle ends with the fleet of the Principality of Dawn temporarily retreating, yet the Republic fleet still fails to achieve its combat objectives. If this situation continues, the warships of the Principality of Dawn will suffer increasing wear and damage. Unlike the Republic fleet, which can easily rotate its ships, the Principality of Dawn may soon find itself without any available warships. Rear Admiral Cassio-Tag is acutely aware of this, and despite the heavy battle damage, he is determined to confront the Principality of Dawn's fleet head-on until the end. The ground battlefield is even more brutal. After the Republic's ground forces launched a general offensive, Volgograd Kennedy ordered the defenders on planet Anji to hold their ground. He mobilized a total of 2.8 million troops, nearly 20 times the number of clone troopers in the Republic. The defenders on planet Anji, united in their resolve, launched wave after wave of counterattacks against the Republic's positions. However, despite the mass production and low cost of spotty clone soldiers, their combat skills and physical fitness are still far superior to those of ordinary soldiers. Additionally, the Republic has absolute air superiority. After securing control of the skies, the Republic's fighter formations continuously bombarded the defenders of planet Anji, inflicting heavy losses. The defenders are fighting against the steel torrent of the Galactic Republic almost with flesh and blood. On the second day of the battle, the Republic's armies advanced more than 40 kilometers. Suddenly, all contact with one of the advancing armies was lost. A reconnaissance plane sent to investigate only managed to transmit a single message, "They are marching towards us," before it too disappeared. This army was located on the battlefield north of the capital area. Observers noted that in that direction, a black mist filled with death and despair loomed ominously. Just looking at it felt like being torn apart by countless resentful spirits. In just 1 hour, the northern side of the capital district had transformed into a realm of death. Chapter 1663, The Challenge of the Dead Angel. A small group of people walked across a barren land, all clad in black cloaks and metal masks, exuding an aura of mystery and terror. A gust of wind, directionless and cold, swept through, lifting their cloaks to reveal the black garments underneath. Leading the group were 2 figures, one tall and strong, the other short and stout. The shorter figure was Sa Kuis, a dark side force user who had arrived with the Republic Expeditionary Force. The taller figure was Jean Droga. Both were members of the Hand of the Chancellor, a dark side organization founded by the Sith Lord Darth Sidious, also known as Sheev Palpatine, the Chancellor of the Republic. Their mission during this expedition was to protect the expeditionary force and combat the force masters of the Principality of Dawn. If the opportunity arose, they were to eliminate the Grand Duke of the Principality of Dawn, another Sith Lord known as the Dead Angel. They had indeed encountered the Dead Angel. Unfortunately, the Dead Angel had also found them. Just a few hours ago, the land beneath their feet had been covered in grass and bushes, resilient despite the ravages of war. Now it was a desolate, icy wasteland, devoid of life and color. This was the world of death. 4 legions of Republic clone soldiers had been deployed in this combat direction. 2 of these legions had completely lost contact, and many units from the remaining 2 legions had also gone silent. Sakuis understood this as the Dead Angel's declaration of war. Within an hour, the Dead Angel had transformed the area into a death zone, and the fate of nearly 30,000 clone troopers was clear. The surrounding Republic army had begun to disperse to avoid the Dead Angel's wrath. One of the Cheer-class assault landing ships had aimed its guns at the area and conducted a round of fire suppression. However, everyone knew that such bombing alone could not fatally harm the Dead Angel. The final resolution would require a master of the Force. In other words, if Sakuis and his companions could not stop the Dead Angel would soon annihilate all their ground troops. The environmental devastation suggested that if the Dead Angel continued, the planet Anji would be severely affected, possibly unrecognizable as Gaia after the war. However, one should never expect a Sith Lord to have scruples. The Dead Angel would sacrifice an entire planet if deemed necessary. Sakuis was well aware of this. The Dead Angel's strength far surpasses ours, he said in a deep voice. This is not like space. The limitations of fighter jets have shortened the distance between us. Here, he can fully unleash his power. Without you, we might not survive 3 minutes against him. Hold him off and look for opportunities. John Droga's voice was rough yet scheming, a contradictory blend. Direct confrontation is not our goal. As long as we can entangle him, we will have more chances to strike. They continued forward. In the middle of a large ruin ahead, countless clone soldiers in white polymer alloy armor staggered out. Their armor was damaged and blood-stained, looking tattered. Normally, with such damage, the soldiers inside would not survive. Yet these soldiers continued to advance, oblivious to their surroundings. Fatal injuries marred their bodies. Here we come. Sakuis lifted his hood, revealing his shiny bald head and those dark, pupilless eyes. Get ready to fight. With a hum, he drew 2 blood-red lightsabers, adopting a rare reverse grip posture. At the same time, the tall John Droga also brandished 2 lightsabers, one red and one yellow. Unlike Sakuis, John Droga held his lightsabers in a standard Jakai sword stance, a style that utilizes double swords among lightsaber techniques. Behind them, 20 dark Jedi Knights ignited their blood-red lightsabers in unison. Suddenly, a ray of light flashed across the sky, followed by a deafening explosion. Boom! An intense blast erupted in the depths of the ruined wall ahead, creating a mushroom cloud. The seekwave was so powerful it could overturn a car. The 20 dark Jedi warriors quickly sought cover, but Sakuis and Jan Droga stood firm against the violent shockwave. The Cheer-class assault landing ship, hovering closest to this direction, had fired, targeting what might be the position of the Dead Angel. Despite the devastation, the oppressive force of death and darkness that blanketed the sky remained undiminished. Sakuis tightened his grip on the metal hilt of his lightsaber. The Dead Angel was still there. Amidst the explosion's aftermath, some clone soldiers' corpses began to rise again. These troopers, even as walking dead, should have been obliterated by the blast, yet they stood once more. This was the power of the Death Force. The Dead Angel is right there. Kill him. Sakuis commanded through gritted teeth. Jan Droga, who had been still, suddenly let out a twisted, greasy laugh. Ha 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 ha! He sheathed his lightsaber and began to walk forward. Go, Sakuis ordered. The 20 dark Jedi behind him immediately followed. The reanimated clone soldiers, now walking dead, screamed and charged forward. However, their full coverage helmets and clone armor rendered them non-lethal, serving only to frighten. Jan Droga moved effortlessly among the walking dead, untouched by them. He and the 20 dark Jedi wielded their lightsabers, cutting down the reanimated soldiers. Limbs and bodies flew in all directions as they carved a path through the undead. Chapter 1664, The Strange Puppet. The group of clone soldiers, now turned into walking corpses, was swiftly annihilated by the Dark Jedi Knights. Suddenly, a bolt of bloody lightning flashed from a distance. At first glance, it seemed to be hundreds of meters away, but in the next second, it struck Jean Droga directly. Surprisingly, the terrible lightning was blocked by Droga. The aftermath of the lightning spread outwards, and the blood-red lightning turned into countless electric snakes that swam through the air, gradually diminishing and disappearing completely after more than 10 seconds. Droga let out a distorted laugh that didn't match his size and appearance. Darth Sidious! An angry voice echoed from the air. A terrible sandstorm suddenly erupted on the barren land in front of them. In the gray sandstorm, a huge face appeared, its mouth opening like a bottomless abyss and roaring. The roar caused everything around to tremble, as if the earth itself was howling. "We meet again," Jandaroha smiled darkly. "Dead Angel. Since you're here, let's make sure you stay forever," Darth Malthil roared, and the force of death, accompanied by endless dust, overwhelmed them. "Be careful." Sakuis, who was behind, quickly crossed 2 lightsabers in front of him to resist. The other 20 Dark Jedi Knights also concentrated their force into their lightsabers, doing their best to resist the terrible force of death. In the face of the boundless death, these Dark Jedi Knights could not even move an inch. Their vitality was being drained bit by the endless sandstorm. Even with the Force, they couldn't stop the encroaching death. The bodies of the Dark Jedi Knights began to shrivel, their ages advancing visibly. Though their faces were hidden under black masks, their arms showed muscles relaxing and skin drying up, gradually becoming skeletal. One of them finally couldn't hold on any longer and fell to the ground, motionless. His body was quickly eroded by the sandstorm, turning into a pile of bones. Then came the second and the third. In just a few minutes, all 20 Dark Jedi Knights were dead. These individuals, lacking sufficient strength, were not even qualified to face Darth Malthil. Only Sakuis and Jandaroga were still struggling. No, to be precise, the only one struggling was Sakuis. The tall figure of John Droga stood as solid as a rock in the gray death sandstorm, unshaken. "Compared to last time, you haven't made much progress. Dead Angel." Jandaroga smiled distortedly. He suddenly waved his hands, and an extremely dark force was launched at the huge face above. In the next second, the endless sandstorm vanished without a trace, as if it had never appeared. Sakuis fell to his knees, panting heavily. He raised his hands and looked at his wrinkled skin, fear gripping his heart. But he forcibly restrained his urge to flee, once again raising the 2 lightsabers in his hands, holding them backwards, and preparing for battle. "You've done well, Sakuis," said John Droga, "but for now, you'd better run away." As he spoke, he tore off his black cloak, revealing iron-like muscles. His nearly 2-meter height and hideous appearance made him look like a terrifying berserker. Hearing his words, Sakuis finally lost the will to continue. His body went limp, and he slumped to the ground, but he soon stood up again, slowly backing away while maintaining a guarded posture. "You found a good puppet, Darth Sidious." A figure appeared not far ahead, as if materializing from thin air. It was Darth Malthil. Behind him was the 1-meter-long, hideous hilt of the soul-seizing sword. He stood there like a ghost, exuding an aura of menace. Without warning, his voice resonated directly in the ears of everyone present. "This is, of course. It really takes a little effort to kill you," Jandaroga said with a smirk. Darth Malthil didn't act immediately, and now he finally understood the reason for the strong sense of unease on the space battlefield. Standing before him, this large, naive-looking man was actually Darth Sidious. On the space battlefield, Darth Malthil had sensed the immense power of Darth Sidious. It was this formidable force that had blocked the erosion of his death energy and saved the Republic fleet. At that time, he found it strange. Why had Darth Sidious come to the model sector? It made no sense. Regardless of the reason, Darth Sidious had no justification for leaving Coruscant and traveling all the way to the Mordell sector. For Darth Sidious, his role as the Chancellor of the Republic was paramount, even more so than his identity as a Sith Lord. The Galactic Republic was the most critical tool for him to realize all his ambitions. The battle situation was not clear at that time, and even if he intended to kill Darth Malthael personally, it shouldn't have been done then. A cunning person like Darth Sidious would never take action without certainty. This was why Darth Malthael felt so apprehensive. Coupled with Volgograd Knidi's subsequent plan, he refrained from making a move. Strangely, after he held back, Darth Sidious's power also disappeared from the battlefield. This confirmed to Darth Malthael that Darth Sidious had come specifically for him. Next, Volgograd Knidi believed that the strength of the Republic Expeditionary Force was still far superior to their fleet, so further strategies were needed to force the Republic fleet to continue dividing its forces. As part of the plan, Darth Malthael decided to strike again. He chose a direction, wiped out the army of the Galactic Republic, and then waited for the other side's arrival. This was his challenge. He used his powerful death force to send a message to Darth Sidious. If you don't come, your ground troops will be completely devoured by me. So Darth Sidious came, but not quite. A large, strange man arrived instead, but he carried the aura of Darth Sidious. End of this chapter.